Hey guys, tonight we are going to peel back the soft, comfortable covers of our modern lives and journey back to a time when medicine was a grim cocktail of hope, desperation, and whatever was growing by the side of the road. Picture, just for a moment, the world outside your window dissolving. The streetlights flicker and die, replaced by the faint, greasy glow of a tallow lamp. The gentle hum of your refrigerator ceases, and in its place, you hear the distant lowing of an ox and the much, much closer scratching of rats in the walls. We're stepping into the dirt-caked shoes of a medieval healer, a person whose job description was somewhere between pharmacist, veterinarian, and village scapegoat. Frankly, a successful day was one where you didn't accidentally poison anyone. You probably won't survive this particular career path, but we're going to walk it together anyway. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And for a bit of fun, post your city or country and what time it is for you right now in the comments. I love seeing where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your world begins not with a choice, but with a shivering resignation. You are maybe 7 or 8 years old, a milestone that more than half of the children born in your village never get to see. Your awakening is a daily assault on the senses. There is no gentle alarm, only the insistent crowing of a rooster who seems to be perched directly on your thatched roof, and the grunting of the family pig, which shares your one-room hovel and smells exactly as you'd expect. You uncurl from a lumpy straw pallet on the dirt floor, the kind of bed that leaves you feeling more tired than when you lay down. A coarse wool blanket, your only shield against the damp chill that seeps up from the earth, is pulled away. It's your father. His face is a roadmap of hardship, his expression not cruel, but simply done. There are too many mouths to feed, and you are the third son. You will not inherit the tiny strip of land. He works for the local lord. You are not strong enough yet to be a blacksmith's apprentice. You are, in the brutal calculus of medieval survival, a surplus. But you have one thing: a quietness, a way of sitting with the family's aging dog when its leg was lame, stroking its fur without flinching from the pus. You once pointed out which berries made the chickens sick. It's not much, but in a world of superstition and desperation, it's enough to be noticed. And so, a deal has been struck. Your future has been traded for a side of cured bacon and a small sack of rye. You are to be the apprentice to the village healer. The man who comes to collect you is named Elric. He doesn't look like a man of medicine. He looks ancient, though he's probably only in his late 40s. His back is bent into a permanent question mark from years of stooping. His robes are the color of dried mud, stained with things you don't want to identify, and he smells powerfully of wood smoke, damp wool, and something acrid, like boiled cabbage that's been left out for a week. He doesn't greet you. He simply gestures with a gnarled hand, a summons. Your mother presses a small, stale heel of bread into your hand, her eyes suspiciously bright, and then she turns away. This is the last kindness you will know for a very long time. You trudge behind Elric, your bare feet sinking into the cold, viscous mud that serves as the village's main thoroughfare. This home is not much different from yours, perhaps slightly larger, but infinitely more cluttered and oppressive. The air inside is thick with the scent of drying herbs hanging from the rafters. Bunches of yarrow, chamomile, and St. John's wort. Their dusty, sweet smells warring with the ever-present stench of the smoke hole, and a strange, metallic tang you'll soon come to recognize as old blood. Your apprenticeship begins not with lessons, but with labor. Crushing, endless, mind-numbing labor. Your first task is to take the heavy stone mortar and pestle, a tool that feels like it weighs more than you do, and grind dried comfrey root into a fine powder. For hours, your arms burn, your shoulders ache, your fingers go numb. When you slow down, Elric's sharp voice, thin and reedy, cuts through the haze of your exhaustion. Finer. A poultice is no good if it is coarse. It will chafe the humors. You have no idea what a humor is, but you learn quickly that chafing them is very, very bad. Your days fall into a bleak rhythm. You wake before the sun, fetch icy water from the communal well, a task that makes your hands raw and red. You stoke the fire. You sweep the floor, which is really just rearranging the dirt and spilled herbs into slightly different patterns. You clean the pots from the previous day's concoctions, scraping away thick, black residue that clings with a vengeance. You learn to empty the bucket of bloody rags and other unpleasant things into the ditch behind a cottage, holding your breath against the stench. This is not the noble calling you might have imagined. This is the life of a scullion, a servant, whose only payment is a thin, bitter stew at the end of the day and a space on the floor near the hearth. Elric rarely speaks to you, but when he does, it is to impart a piece of grim, practical knowledge. Never use the red-capped mushrooms, he'll grunt, pointing to a sketch in a precious, Browning book. They quiet the gut, yes, permanently. Or, while you're cleaning a set of bronze tools. Wine is for cleaning wounds, and for the lord of the manor. For everyone else, boiled water will do. If they live, it was God's will. If they die, it was also God's will. This is a lesson you will see repeated over and over. Your role is not to cure, but to assist nature, or more accurately, to try and not get in God's way. One afternoon, a frantic woman rushes in, holding her young son who is wailing from a sharp, sudden pain in his side. Elric barely looks up from his book. "Elf-shot," he mutters. "This is your introduction to a key part of your future profession." The mainstream historical fact is that most healers like Elric had no formal training. Knowledge was passed down master to apprentice, a jumble of practical herbalism, garbled Latin phrases from half-remembered texts, and deep-seated folk belief. They were a world away from the university-trained physicians who attended to kings, who studied Galen and Hippocrates. You are on the front lines, where science hasn't even been born yet. Here, a sudden stabbing pain isn't a symptom of appendicitis. It's a tiny, invisible arrow fired by a mischievous or malicious elf. The cure, therefore, isn't medical, but magical. This is the quirky tidbit of your world, the very real diagnosis of being shot by a fairy. Elric sends you to fetch a smooth, black stone from a box, along with a sprig of yarrow. He mumbles a series of words over the boy, a mix of prayers to Saint Sebastian and older, darker-sounding phrases. He then presses the stone to the boy's side and gives the mother a charm to hang around his neck. The boy, eventually, stops crying, more from exhaustion than any magical cure. The mother pays with 2 eggs and a torrent of relieved thanks. Elric, the first hint of gray light is just beginning to filter through the cracks in the cottage wall when Elric's boot nudges your ribs. There's no word, just a grunt and a jerk of his head toward the door. This is your cue. You scramble up, your body a collection of aches, and follow him out into the damp, pre-dawn air. The world is soft and quiet, wrapped in a blanket of mist. Instead of heading toward the well or the woodpile, he leads you around to the back of the hovel, to a small, fenced-in patch of land you had barely noticed before. This, you realize with a jolt of either excitement or dread. You can't tell which, is your first big promotion. You have graduated from indoor filth to outdoor grime. Welcome to the Physic Garden. It is not a beautiful place. If you were imagining neat rows of fragrant flowers and tidy little signs, you can banish that thought right now. This is a chaotic jumble of green, brown, and gray. It's a riot of life, fighting for space, sun, and perches in the same thick, dark mud that constitutes the rest of the village. A wattle fence, woven from hazel branches, does a poor job of keeping out the rabbits. Weeds you don't recognize grow intertwined with plants you are about to learn are priceless. The air here is different, though. It's thick with the scent of damp earth, crushed leaves, and a dozen competing aromas. The sharp, clean scent of mint, the peppery smell of yarrow, the faint, almost sinister sweetness of a flowering vine you don't yet know to fear. Elric gestures to the entire mess with a sweep of his arm. Everything you need is here, he rasps, his voice seeming to be swallowed by the fog. And everything that can kill you. No pressure, then. Your new job is to learn this patch of earth, to know it as intimately as you know the cracks in your own fingernails. Your first lessons are in weeding. But this is weeding on a knife's edge, because pulling what you think is a useless dandelion might mean discarding the only cure for a urinary complaint. Tossing aside a common-looking weed could be throwing away a vital poultice for boils. You learn to move slowly, to look, to touch, to smell. Elric is a harsh teacher. He doesn't explain things twice. He'll crush a leaf between his thumb and forefinger, hold it to your nose. Borage, he'll say, makes a man happy. Brew it for courage before a fight, or for a sad heart. You see the tiny, star-shaped blue flowers and commit it to memory. He points to a plant with feathery leaves. Fennel, for the eyes, and to quiet a rumbling gut. Slowly, you start to understand the logic of this place. It's a philosophy that will govern your entire life. The mainstream historical fact known as the doctrine of signatures. The theory is deceptively simple. God, in his infinite wisdom, has marked his creations with a sign, or a signature, to indicate their purpose. You see lumwort, with its pale, spotted leaves that look vaguely like a diseased lung. That's for a cough, for ailments of the chest. You find a plant called liverwort. Its lobes look a bit like a liver, so you use it for jaundice and other liver troubles. Eyebright's delicate flower, with its purple and yellow streaks, resembles a bloodshot eye, so it's clearly meant for ocular problems. It's a beautifully simple system, an attempt to read the mind of God in the book of nature. It's also, of course, almost entirely wrong. But it's the only system you have. It gives shape and purpose to the chaos, a reason to choose one plant over another. It's better than guessing. Usually, you spend weeks in that garden. Your hands become permanently stained with green from chlorophyll and brown from dirt. Your fingernails are never clean. You learn the feel of dozens of different leaves, the fuzzy softness of mullein, the waxy strength of comfrey, the slightly oily texture of rosemary. You learn which stems snap cleanly and which ones stubbornly resist. And you learn the more esoteric rules, the quirky tidbits that lie beyond the simple doctrine of signatures. Elric teaches you that some plants have sympathies and antipathies. Never plant rue near basil, he warns. They are enemies and will both sicken. He tells you that rosemary and sage grow well together, as they are friends and lend each other strength. It makes no logical sense, but in a world governed by unseen forces, you don't question it. The plants have spirits, personalities, just as people do. You learn that the timing of the harvest is everything. Marigolds for a fever must be picked at midday, under the full strength of the sun. The roots of mandrake, a plant whispered to be so powerful that its scream can kill a man when pulled from the earth, must be harvested under a full moon, using an ivory knife, after drawing a circle around it 3 times. You are never, ever to let its root touch your bare skin. Elric has a small, gnarled piece of it wrapped in leather, kept in a locked box. He shows it to you once. It looks disappointingly like a shriveled parsnip. The origin of all this strange, specific knowledge is a mystery. Historians still argue whether this folk wisdom was a corrupted remnant of classical learning from Roman times, passed down and distorted through 1,000 years of illiteracy, or if it developed independently in isolated communities across Europe, a product of trial, error, and shared superstition. Was Elric's warning about rue and basil a garbled memory of a text by Pliny the Elder, or was it a discovery made by his great-grandmother? You don't know. All you know is that these are the rules. To break them is to risk failure, to court disaster. It's to spit in the eye of God, or the elves, or whatever ancient power makes the herbs grow. One sweltering afternoon, while clearing a patch of what you think is wild carrot, you reach for a plant with similar feathery leaves and delicate white flowers. Stop. Elric's voice is sharper than you've ever heard it. He grabs your wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. You freeze. He points with a trembling finger. Look. Closely. You look. The stem has faint purple splotches. Poison hemlock, he says, his voice low and intense. The one that killed the great philosopher in Athens. A single bite of the root will make your feet go numb, then your legs. Then your heart will forget how to beat. Never touch it. If you must pull it, use a rag. And burn it. Do not let the smoke touch your eyes. That is your introduction to the other side of the garden. The deadly side. Elric shows you the belladonna, the beautiful lady, with its shiny black berries. One berry makes a woman's eyes wide and beautiful, he says, a rare, grim smile touching his lips. 3 berries make her sleep forever. We use a single drop of the juice, much watered down, for the falling sickness. He points out the tall, elegant spires of foxglove. A leaf, boiled and drunk, can calm a frantic heart. 2 leaves will stop it cold. You stare at the beautiful, deadly plant, a new kind of fear dawning on you. The line between a medicine and a poison is terrifyingly thin. It is not in the plant itself, but in your hand, in your knowledge, in the dose. It's a joke you'll hear later in life from a traveling cynic. What's the difference between a healer and a murderer? Years have passed since you first set foot in Elric's smoky hovel. You are no longer a frightened child of 7, but a lanky youth on the cusp of manhood. The down on your chin is starting to coarsen, and your voice is settled into a lower register. The rhythms of the healer's life are etched into your very bones. You can now grind herbs with your eyes closed, identifying them by smell alone. You can prepare a dozen different salves, tinctures, and poultices without having to consult Elric's precious, grease-stained book. You have learned to set a simple fracture, splinting it with wood and strips of linen, and to soothe a colicky baby with dill water. You've even developed a bit of a swagger as you walk through the village, not the swagger of a warrior, but the quiet, knowing confidence of someone who holds secrets. A poultice swagger, if you will. You think you're ready. You are about to learn how wrong you are. It happens on a Tuesday, a day of suffocating summer heat. The air is thick with flies and the smell of hot mud. A farmer, a man named Thomas you've known your whole life, is helped into the cottage by his wife. Thomas is a bear of a man, his skin weathered to leather by the sun, but today he is pale and sweating, his face tight with pain. He'd been sharpening his scythe when it slipped, laying open a deep gash on his lower leg. His wife had wrapped it with a piece of her apron, which is now soaked through with a brownish-red stain. Elric is out, summoned to a nearby hamlet to attend a reeve with a stone in his bladder, a far more prestigious and potentially profitable case. He left you in charge of the cottage. No one important will come, he'd said. Just boils and coughs. Don't kill anyone. A fine vote of confidence. Now, Thomas is here, his wife looking at you with wide, pleading eyes. This is it. Your first real patient. All on your own. A surge of nervous energy courses through you. You can do this. You gesture for Thomas to sit on the low stool, trying to make your movements look as measured and wise as Elric's. You gently unwrap the crude bandage. The wound is ugly. It's 4 inches long, deep, and the edges are already red and swollen. It weeps a thin, yellowish fluid. But it's a clean cut. A wound. You know wounds. You recall your lessons. First, you must clean it. You take a small portion of the precious wine reserved for such things. A mainstream historical fact is that wine was a common antiseptic, its alcoholic content helping to cleanse wounds long before germ theory was understood. You boil some water with a pinch of salt and carefully wash away the dirt and dried blood. Thomas hisses in pain but doesn't cry out. Next, the dressing. You know exactly what to do. You go to the large clay pot where you store the honey. This is one of your most valuable medicines, known even in ancient times to help wounds stay clean and heal faster, though you don't know why. You just know it works. You smear a generous amount of the thick, golden liquid directly into the gash. It's one of the few truly effective remedies in your arsenal. You then prepare a poultice. You crush fresh camphor leaves, the great knit-bone herb, with a little yarrow to be safe, mixing it into a green, fragrant paste with some warm water. You spread this over a clean piece of linen and bind it firmly around Thomas's leg. You step back, a feeling of deep, profound satisfaction washing over you. You did it. You followed the steps. You cleaned the wound, applied the honey, and dressed it with the proper herbs. You look at Thomas's wife and offer a reassuring nod. Keep it clean, you say, your voice an octave lower than you intended. Change the dressing every day. You will be well. She blesses you, her face awash with relief. Thomas, gritting his teeth, gives you a weak but grateful smile. He promises you a portion of his autumn harvest, which feels more like a long-term investment strategy than actual payment. They leave, and you are left alone in the cottage, glowing with the warm light of your own competence. 2 days later, you see Thomas's wife hurrying towards the cottage, her face a mask of panic. Your stomach clenches. She bursts in, frantic. It's worse. Much worse. He's burning with fever. You grab your bag and follow her, your confident swagger completely gone. You find Thomas lying on his straw pallet, shivering despite the heat, his teeth chattering. He's delirious, muttering about rainfall and crows. You pull back the blanket. The smell hits you first, a sickly sweet, rotten odor that makes you gag. You unwrap the bandage. The leg is swollen to twice its normal size, the skin a mottled purple and an angry red. And from the wound, thin red lines are snaking their way up his thigh, like poisonous red vines. You have seen this before in one of Elric's books. A crude drawing, a wound man. A single, horrific figure showing all the possible injuries a person could suffer. This is the quirky tidbit of your world, a visual index of surgical horrors, from arrow wounds to disembowelment. And you remember seeing those red lines on the wound man, pointing to a festering leg wound, with a grim notation in Latin that you couldn't fully translate. You don't know it's lymphangitis, a sign of a massive systemic infection. You just know it means death. Panic freezes you. Your mind is a blank. What did you do wrong? The wine? The honey? The comfrey? It was all correct. It was what Elric would have done. You try another poultice, this time with mustard seed to draw out the poison. But you know it's useless. Your hands are shaking. You are no longer a healer. You are a terrified boy watching a man die. Elric returns that evening to find you sitting numbly by Thomas's side. He takes one look at the leg, his face grim. He wastes no time. He barks at you to stoke the fire, to place the flat-bladed cautery iron in the coals until it glows. The smell of hot metal fills the small hovel. Thomas's wife begins to weep, a low, hopeless sound. Elric says a short prayer, then, without ceremony, presses the glowing iron into the wound. The sound is one you will never forget. A sickening sizzle, the smell of burnt flesh, and a single, horrible, animal scream from Thomas that seems to tear the air in two. Then, mercifully, he faints. But it's too late. The poison is in his blood. The fever does not break. Thomas dies just before dawn, without ever waking up. His wife doesn't scream or rage at you. She just looks at you with empty, hollow eyes. Your fancy poultice, your confident pronouncements, it was all for nothing. You are a fraud. A failure. You stumble back to Elric's cottage, the smell of death and burnt meat clinging to you. Elric is sitting by the fire, staring into the flames. He doesn't look at you as you enter. You did nothing wrong, he says, his voice flat. And you did nothing right. You did what was to be done. The rest was in God's hands. He explains that Thomas's blood was likely corrupted, his humors imbalanced before the wound ever happened. The cut was merely the opportunity for the ill humor to take over. It is no comfort. You see the truth. Your knowledge, your herbs, your careful preparations. They are a flimsy shield against the great, dark ocean of disease and death. You are the ghost of Thomas follows you for weeks. His face, pale and sweating, appears in your dreams. The phantom smell of burnt flesh catches you unawares as you stir a pot of stew. You move through your chores with a leaden slowness, the bright spark of your youthful confidence utterly extinguished. Elric, in his own gruff way, seems to understand. He doesn't chide you for your silence or your fumbling hands. Instead, one evening, he decides it is time for your real education to begin. Not the practical, hands-on learning of the garden, but the theoretical framework that underpins all of Western medicine. It's time to learn about the humors. He unrolls a precious, brittle sheet of parchment on the table. It's a diagram, a complex chart of circles and lines connecting words in a spidery, faded script. It looks like a mystical symbol, a tool for summoning something. In a way it is. It's a tool for summoning a diagnosis, for making sense of the chaotic mess of human suffering. Everything. Elric begins, his voice taking on a rare, professorial tone, is made of 4 elements: earth, water, air, and fire. The world, the beasts, the trees, and man. He taps the parchment, and within the body of man, these elements take the form of 4 humors. For liquids, this is it, the central, governing theory of medicine for over 1,000 years, a mainstream historical fact originating with the ancient Greeks and Romans, particularly Hippocrates and later Galen. This is the intellectual bedrock of your entire profession. Elric points to the sections of the chart, explaining the connections. From earth comes black bile, he says, his finger tracing a line. It is cold and dry. It resides in the spleen. An excess of black bile makes a man melancholic, sad, slow, quiet, thoughtful. He looks at you pointedly, and you have a sinking feeling he's just diagnosed your current mood. From water comes phlegm. He moves his finger. It is cold and moist. It lives in the brain and lungs. Too much phlegm makes a man phlegmatic, calm, peaceful, perhaps lazy and dull. From air comes blood. His finger taps the center. It is hot and moist. Its home is the liver. A man with a healthy abundance of blood is sanguine, cheerful, optimistic, sociable, and ruddy-cheeked. And from fire, he concludes, his finger landing on the final quadrant, comes yellow bile, or choler. It is hot and dry. It is held in the gallbladder. An excess of choler makes a man choleric, fiery, ambitious, quick to anger, aggressive. You stare at the chart, trying to absorb the elegant, symmetrical logic of it all. It's a complete system. It explains not just illness, but personality, temperament, even the seasons of the year and the stages of life. Spring is sanguine, summer is choleric, autumn is melancholic, and winter is phlegmatic. Youth is hot and moist like blood. Old age is cold and dry like black bile. It all fits. It's a beautiful, intricate clockwork of correspondences, a map to the human soul. Health, Elric continues, is when these 4 humors are in perfect balance. Sickness is when one humor overpowers the others. Our job, our only job, is to find which humor is in excess and to help the body get rid of it. Suddenly, the death of Thomas shifts into focus. Elric had said his blood was corrupted. Now you understand. The wound was hot and wet, a sign of excess blood. But then the fever came, a dry heat. That was yellow bile, choler, running rampant. The swelling and the pus. That was bad phlegm. The red lines, they were a sign that the humors were fighting a losing battle, putrefying within the body. It wasn't your fault. It was a catastrophic imbalance, a humoral storm that no simple poultice could ever hope to quell. This new knowledge is both a comfort and a curse. It gives you a language for failure, a reason beyond your own inadequacy. But it also presents a mind-bogglingly complex diagnostic puzzle. How do you know for sure which humor is the culprit? Ulrich explains. You must use all your senses. You look at the patient's color. Is he pale, phlegm, or flushed blood? You listen to his breathing. Is it wet and rattling, phlegm, or shallow and hot, choler? You feel his skin. Is it cold and clammy, phlegm, or burning hot, choler? You even, and you try not to gag at the thought, are sometimes expected to taste the patient's sweat or urine for clues, salty, sweet, or bitter. It's a full-body investigation. The cure is always rooted in opposition. The principle of contraries. If the disease is caused by an excess of a hot, dry humor like yellow bile, you must treat it with things that are cold and moist. You prescribe cooling foods like cucumber and melon, and herbs like water lily and violet. You might even have the patient bathe in cool water. If the ailment is from an excess of cold, moist phlegm, like a chesty cough, you must fight it with things that are hot and dry. You prescribe warming foods like pepper and onions, and herbs like mustard and ginger. You might wrap the patient in warm blankets and have them breathe in the steam from a hot kettle. It sounds so logical, so beautifully systematic. But as you begin to apply this theory, you quickly run into problems. A man comes in with a fever, hot, but is also pale and sweating moist. Is that a choleric or phlegmatic problem? Or worse, a sanguine one? Your head swims with the contradictory signals. Ulrich tells you this is where the art lies, in discerning the primary cause. But to you, it feels like guesswork wrapped in a fancy vocabulary. This leads to the quirky and often dangerous side of humoral theory, the diet. Since every food, herb, and spice has its own humoral property, hot, cold, wet, dry, a healer is also a dietary consultant. You spend hours memorizing lists. Pork is moist and cold. Beef is dry and hot. Fish are generally cold and moist, which is why they are good for people with fevers. This is why you will see paintings from this era of people serving fish to the sick. It's not just easily digestible, it's humoral medicine. Chicken is considered one of the most perfectly balanced meats, neither too hot nor too cold. The wealthy can afford to balance their humors with a varied diet of expensive fowl, spices, and out-of-season fruits. The poor eat bread, cheese, and whatever pottage they can make. Their diet is overwhelmingly cold and moist. Historians still argue whether the perceived higher rate of phlegmatic illnesses among the peasantry was a genuine medical phenomenon or simply a class-based diagnosis reflecting their monotonous, dampening diet and living conditions. One day, a young woman comes to you complaining of lethargy, sadness, and a feeling of heaviness. She weeps for no reason. A classic case. You puff out your chest, feeling knowledgeable. An excess of melancholy, you declare. Black bile. Cold and dry. You confidently prescribe a treatment of opposites. She must eat warming, moistening foods. Now that you understand the grand, confounding theory of the four humors, it is time to learn the single most important and terrifying practice in your medical toolkit. It's the answer to nearly every problem, the universal solution for humoral imbalance, the grim cornerstone of your profession for the next 500 years. It is time to learn how to bleed a man. Elric sees your humoral confusion as a sign that you are ready. Theory is one thing. Violent, direct action is another. He tells you that when a humor is in excess, the simplest, most direct way to remove it is to open a tap and let it out. Since all the humors are mixed together in the blood, letting some out will necessarily reduce the surplus of the offending one. This is bloodletting, and it is used for everything. Fever? You have too much hot blood. Bleed the patient to cool them down. Aches and pains? Your blood is thick and stagnant. Bleed them to get it flowing. Sadness? Your blood is tainted with black bile. Bleed them to lighten the mixture. A fit of rage? Too much choler in the blood. Bleed them to calm them. It is the great cure-all, the reset button for the entire human body. Your first lesson involves not a person, but a jar. It's a large, slimy glass jar kept in a cool, dark corner of the cottage. Inside, a writhing, dark mass shifts and coils. These are your primary assistants, your tiny, silent surgeons, leeches. Elric reaches into the jar with a pair of wooden tongs, his hand moving with a practiced ease that you find deeply unsettling. He plucks out a single, glistening black creature, about the length of your thumb. It elongates and contracts in the tongs, searching for something to latch onto. They are cleaner than the knife, he says, his voice low. They do not leave a scar that can fester. And they know when they are full. They will drink their fill of the bad blood and fall off on their own. He explains their care and feeding, which is a profession in its own right. They must be kept in fresh water, with moss and pebbles at the bottom of the jar. They can go for months without feeding, but a healthy leech is a hungry leech. Sometimes, if there are no patients, he will let them feed on a frog, or even, he admits, on his own arm, just to keep them vigorous. The thought makes your skin crawl. This is the quirky tidbit that defines your new reality. You are now a part-time worm farmer. The quality of your leeches is a direct reflection on your skill as a healer. A man with fat, lazy leeches is not to be trusted. Your first task is simply to handle them. You reach into the jar with the tongs, your hand trembling slightly. The leeches feel slick and surprisingly muscular. They writhe against the wood, and one almost escapes your grasp, falling onto the table with a wet plop. You flinch back as if it were a viper. They will not harm you, Elric says, without a trace of sympathy. Pick it up. You do, managing to get it back into the jar. Applying a leech is an art. You can't just plop it onto a patient's skin. They can be picky. You must first wash the area, perhaps even shave it. Then, to entice the creature, you might prick the skin to draw a tiny bead of blood, or smear the area with milk or sugar. You then hold the leech over the spot, its head, a tiny mouth with 3 sharp, microscopic jaws, searching. When it latches on, there is a small, sharp bite, and then nothing. It injects an anesthetic so its host doesn't feel the bite, as well as an anticoagulant to keep the blood flowing freely. You don't know the science of this, of course. To you, It is simply the creature's God-given nature. But leeches are slow. They are for gentle rebalancing. For a true, raging excess of a humor, you need something faster, more dramatic. You need the phlegm and the lancet. Elric shows you the tools. The phlegm is a brass or steel instrument with several small, triangular blades of different sizes that fold out, like a pocket knife for vampires. You choose the blade size based on the thickness of the vein you intend to open. The lancet is simpler, a small, pointed, two-edged knife, wickedly sharp. You spend an afternoon just practicing, not on a person, but on a piece of pig skin stretched over a log. You learn the quick, flicking motion of the wrist required to open a vein without cutting too deep, without severing an artery. It is a terrifying skill to acquire. The final piece of the puzzle is the bleeding bowl. It's a shallow pewter or ceramic dish, often with graduated lines marked on the inside, so you can measure precisely how much blood you are taking. 4 ounces? 8. A full pint. The amount is determined by the severity of the illness and the constitution of the patient. A strong, ruddy-faced farmer can spare more than a pale, thin woman. Taking too much can cause a swoon, or even death. Taking too little will have no effect. It's another one of your terrifying judgment calls. Your first human patient for bloodletting is a blacksmith named Hugh, a mountain of a man suffering from what you diagnose as a surfeit of blood. He has headaches, a ruddy complexion, and a booming voice that echoes in your small cottage. He feels too full, a classic sanguine excess. Hugh rolls up his sleeve, revealing a forearm crisscrossed with veins as thick as ropes. Elric directs you. Find the cephalic vein, he instructs, pointing to a prominent vessel on the inside of the elbow. Tie the tourniquet above it. Not too tight. You wrap a strip of leather around Hugh's bicep and pull it snug. The vein bulges, a dark blue river beneath the skin. Your heart is pounding in your ears. This is not like the pig skin. This is a living man. Your hand, holding the lancet, is slick with sweat. Elric places his hand over yours, steadying it. Quickly, a clean cut, along the line of the vein, not across. You take a breath, try to channel Elric's detached calm, and make the cut. Blood wells up immediately, thick and shockingly red. You quickly press the lip of the bleeding bowl to the cut. The blood flows, dark and vital, into the bowl. Hugh doesn't even flinch, just watches with a sort of detached curiosity. You watch the blood level rise. 2 ounces. 4 ounces. Elric nods. Enough. You remove the tourniquet, and the flow slows. You press a pad of clean linen to the small cut, bandage it tightly, and it's over. Hugh stands up, shakes his head as if clearing it, and a broad grin splits his face. Ah, that's better. I feel lighter already. He pays with a small coin and leaves, whistling. You stare at the bowl of blood, a mixture of horror and triumph churning in your gut. You have done it. You have bled a man, and he has walked away happy. The mainstream historical fact here is the sheer ubiquity of this practice. Bleeding charts, complex diagrams showing which specific vein to bleed for which specific ailment, were a common feature in medical texts. Got a headache? Bleed the forehead vein. A toothache? Bleed the vein under the tongue. Liver problems? Bleed the vein in the right arm. It was a complex and specific cartography of the body's plumbing. Historians still argue whether the perceived benefits of bloodletting were purely psychosomatic, the patient feeling like something dramatic and curative was being done, or if there were occasional accidents after the draining drama of bloodletting. Your next area of study feels almost genteel by comparison, though considerably more fragrant. Elric decides it's time for you to become fluent in the second great diagnostic art of your era, uroscopy. In simpler terms, you're about to become a piss prophet. You will learn to gaze into a flask of human urine and divine the secrets of the patient's inner world, their humoral state, their past indiscretions, and their likely future. It is a practice that is part medicine, part theatrical performance, and it will become one of your most frequently used skills. Your new essential tool is a transparent glass flask, shaped like a flattened bladder with a long neck. It's called a metulla. Elric has a small collection of them, and he guards them jealously, as clear glass is a valuable commodity. He hands you one. It feels cool and smooth in your hands, a lens through which you will now view the landscape of disease. The urine, Elric explains, holding a metulla filled with a pale yellow liquid up to the light of the doorway, is the messenger of the liver. It is a window into the whole body. It tells us what is being cooked within and what is being cast out. The process begins with the patient, or more often, a servant or family member, bringing you a sample in the morning. The first urine of the day is considered the most potent, the most honest. They arrive at your door, holding the flask with a mixture of hope and trepidation, as if they are delivering a holy relic. And in a way they are. They are delivering the key to their own mystery. Your job is to perform a meticulous 20-point inspection. Elric makes you memorize the points from his tattered book. The first, and most obvious, is the color. He has a chart, a uroscopy wheel. This is the mainstream historical fact of the practice. These circular diagrams, with up to 30 different colors depicted, were essential reference tools for any physician or healer. They ranged from albus, white as well water, which could indicate a cold, phlegmatic condition, all the way to niger, black as ink, a sign of mortification and impending death. In between are a dozen shades of yellow, red, orange, and green, each with a specific humoral meaning. A reddish urine, rufus, points to an excess of blood. A pale yellow, subcitrinous, is the sign of a healthy, well-tempered digestion. But color is just the beginning. You must then assess the consistency. Is it thick and syrupy, or thin and watery? Thick urine suggests the humors are being well digested and expelled, while thin, watery urine in a sick person is a terrible sign. It means the body is too weak to cook the humors properly. Next, you hold the flask up and look for its clarity and contents. Are there bubbles? Froth on the top can indicate a head ailment, as the airy humor of the brain is escaping. Is there sediment? You must observe its position. Does it sink to the bottom? A good sign. The body is expelling the badness. Float in the middle, a sign of a sickness in the stomach or core, or float at the top, a sign of an ailment in the head. Is the sediment sandy, flaky, or like bran? Each has a different meaning. And then comes the part you've been dreading. You must assess the odor. You unstopper the flask and take a cautious sniff. Is it sweet-smelling? Does it have the foul stench of corruption? Is it strangely aromatic? Elric tells you a story of a great physician who diagnosed a knight with a love sickness just by the scent of his urine alone. You suspect this story might be slightly exaggerated. This part of the job is a daily assault on your nostrils. It's a joke you'll never tell. But you start to think the real reason healers look so grim is because they've smelled things no man should ever have to smell. The most bizarre, quirky tidbit of uroscopy, one that separates the merely competent from the truly dedicated, is the occasional necessity of tasting. You pray it won't come to this often. Elric explains that for certain conditions, tasting is the only way to be sure. He describes how the urine of a person with a wasting sickness, what we would now call diabetes, has a distinctly sweet taste, like honey. The ability to diagnose by taste was considered a mark of a highly skilled physician. You make a mental note to try and avoid patients with wasting sickness. Your first solo uroscopy is for a wealthy merchant's wife. A servant in fine livery arrives with a medulla filled with a cloudy, reddish-orange liquid. The servant looks at you with a skeptical eye, clearly wondering if a boy your age can be trusted with such a delicate matter. You take a deep breath, trying to project an aura of ancient wisdom. You hold the flask up to the light, swirling it gently as you've seen Elric do 100 times. You are putting on a show. The performance is half the cure. You narrow your eyes, purse your lips, and make a soft humming sound of concentration. Yes. You begin, your voice low and serious. You consult your mental color chart. The color is somewhere between rufus and subrufus. There is too much heat. The liver is working too hard. A choleric imbalance. You examine the cloudiness. The humors are in conflict. There is a battle within her. You point to some flaky sediment floating in the middle. The trouble lies in the middle region. The stomach, perhaps the kidneys. You unstopper it for the sniff test, trying not to recoil. It's pungent, but not foul. You make another non-committal hum. You then deliver your diagnosis with as much gravity as you can muster. The lady's collar is inflamed, and it is warring with her sanguine humor. She must avoid hot and dry foods. No pepper, no roasted meats. She should eat boiled fish, lettuces, and cucumber. I will prepare a cooling tincture of chicory and water lily. The servant, impressed by your solemn performance and your confident use of medical jargon, nods respectfully. He gives you a coin for the consultation and another for the tincture you are about to mix. You have successfully translated a flask of pee into a treatment plan and, more importantly, into cash. It's a powerful tool, but like all your tools, it's fraught with potential for error and deception. Historians still argue whether uroscopy was primarily a diagnostic tool or a psychological one. Did healers genuinely believe they could see the intricate details of a disease in a medulla, or was it a ritual designed to inspire confidence in the patient, a physical prop for the healer's authority? For you, it feels like a bit of both. You do believe the urine holds clues, but you also understand that the patient's belief in your ability to read it is just as important as the reading itself. The system is easily abused. You learn that a patient's diet can dramatically change the color of their urine. Someone who eats beets will produce red urine, which a less scrupulous healer might diagnose as a serious sanguine imbalance requiring expensive treatment. A person who has been running or is dehydrated will have dark, concentrated urine, which could be mistaken for a sign of a grave illness. You have to become a detective, asking questions about diet, activity, and even the time of day the sample was taken. One afternoon, A panicked young man brings you a sample from his new bride. It's terrifyingly dark, almost black. Niger. The feeling of power you get from holding a metulla of urine to the light is a fragile, indoor sort of magic. It's the authority of the scholar, safe within his sanctum. But your work is rarely so clean or contained. After you've delivered your solemn, vague pronouncements to the merchant's servant, Elric jerks his head toward the leather satchel hanging by the door. It's time to make your rounds. It's time to leave the theoretical world of uroscopy charts and wade, quite literally, into the messy reality of the village. You shoulder the bag, its contents clinking softly, a few pots of salve, dried herbs wrapped in cloth, your lancet and bleeding bowl, just in case. The moment you step outside, the curated world of the cottage vanishes, replaced by a full sensory assault. The village street is not a street. It's a wide, churning ribbon of mud, a primordial soup of dirt, straw, animal droppings, and discarded household waste. It's a multi-purpose mud and sewage canal, and navigating it is a skill in itself. You have learned to walk with a specific, flat-footed gait to keep from losing a shoe in the deeper, more ambitious puddles. The air is thick with the smells of life, unfiltered and unashamed. Wood smoke, the sharp tang of the blacksmith's forge, the sour reek of the tanner's yard, the overwhelming smell of pig, and the faint, ever-present undertone of human waste. Chickens scatter under your feet, and a skinny dog with patchy fur eyes you warily before slinking away. You are a familiar, if not entirely welcome, sight. You are the walker between houses, the bearer of bitter potions and sharp knives, a necessary omen. Your first call is to the baker, a man named Martin whose prosperity is evident in the size of his belly and the solid timber frame of his house. He has sent his boy to fetch you, complaining of a fire in his foot. You knock on the sturdy oak door. Martin's wife lets you in, her face etched with worry. The inside of the house is a different world. It's warm, dry, and smells heavenly of yeast and baked bread. Martin is sitting in a carved chair, his leg propped up on a stool, his face a thunderous mask of pain and indignation. It's the devil's own torment, he growls, pointing a meaty finger at his foot. The problem is immediately obvious. His big toe is swollen to the size of a plum, and the skin is stretched, shiny, and an angry, purplish red. Gout, a classic affliction of the well-fed. The great tragedy of too much pork pie. You kneel to examine it, trying to look professional while he glares at you. You know exactly what this is in humoral terms. Rich food and too much ale have created a surfeit of hot, corrupt humors, sanguine and choleric, which have settled in the extremity of his foot. He is literally stewing in his own excess. You have been eating too much rich meat, Master Baker, you say, trying to sound diagnostic rather than accusatory. I am a baker. I eat what I have earned, he snaps. Are you a healer or my mother? Fix it. This is the scorn. He can afford your services, but he holds you in contempt. You are a tradesman, like the man who shoes his horse, but your trade is somehow dirtier, less reliable. You prepare a poultice of cooling herbs, comfrey and chickweed, and bind his foot, advising him to drink plenty of water and to avoid red meat and wine for a week. He scoffs at the advice, but allows you to apply the dressing. His wife pays you with a small silver coin, her thanks genuine, while her husband merely grunts. As you leave, you hear him muttering to her about herb botherers and their useless weeds. Your next stop is on the opposite end of the social and geographical spectrum. You leave the relative comfort of the village center and head toward the cluster of hovels by the river fields, where the poorest cotters live. Here, the mud is deeper, the smells are ranker, and the houses seem to sag with a weary resignation. You are heading to the home of a woman named Agnes, a widow whose husband died in a border skirmish last year. Her home is a one-room wattle-and-daub hut with a leaking thatched roof and a dirt floor. The inside is dark and filled with smoke from a small, central fire that has no proper chimney. Agnes is gaunt, her face smudged with soot, her eyes holding the dull exhaustion of endless poverty. In the corner, on a pile of rags, lies her son, a boy of about 5. A deep, wet, rattling cough shakes his tiny frame, a sound that seems too large and violent for his small body. You kneel by his side. His skin is hot to the touch, but he shivers. His breathing is shallow and fast. This is not a simple humoral imbalance caused by excess. This is a sickness born of cold, damp, and hunger. The mainstream historical fact of your world is the rigid manorial system. The Lord owns everything: the land, the mill, the forest. The peasants, like Agnes, are tied to that land, working strips in the common fields for a bare subsistence living. The baker's gout and this child's lung fever are two diseases with the same root cause, a social order that creates both gluttony and starvation. Agnes watches you, her eyes wide with a desperate hope that breaks your heart. I made him an elf cake, she whispers, as if confessing a sin. This is a quirky, sad tidbit of folk medicine. If a child was sickly and wasting away, it was sometimes believed that the fairies had stolen the healthy human baby and left a sickly changeling in its place. Special rituals or foods, like an elf cake, made with bizarre ingredients, were used to try and expose the changeling or force the fairies to swap back. Her trying this tells you two things. She is desperate, and she believes the cause of her son's illness is supernatural. You have to navigate this carefully. You cannot dismiss her beliefs, but you must try to offer a physical remedy. The cake may have angered the phlegm in his chest, you say, trying to blend her world with yours. We must soothe it. You give her a syrup you made from horehound and licorice root, knowing it will do little more than quiet the cough for a while. You have nothing to fight the fire in his lungs. You are applying a damp cloth to a burning house. When it's time to leave, Agnes looks at the floor, her face filled with shame. She has no coin. Instead, she presses a single, slightly warm egg into your hand. It feels impossibly fragile. Her gratitude is a physical weight, 100 times heavier than the baker's scorn. You trudge back toward Elric's cottage as the light begins to fail. In one pouch, you have a cold silver coin from a man who despises you for treating his disease of excess. In your other hand, you hold a fragile egg from a woman who blesses you for failing to cure her child's disease of poverty. Historians still argue whether a village healer was seen as a skilled artisan on par with a smith, a feared fringe-dwelling magician, or simply a necessary, low-status evil for dealing with the body's unpleasantness. Standing there in the mud, clutching your bizarrely mismatched payment, you realize the answer is yes. You are all of them at once. Respected by none, despised by some, and desperately needed by all. Your retirement plan. The fragile egg from the widow Agnes is still in your satchel when the frantic pounding on the cottage door begins. It's long after dark, the time when only desperation or death comes calling. You and Elric both look up from the bitter herb stew you're sharing for your evening meal. The pounding comes again, more insistent, accompanied by a man's panicked voice shouting Elric's name. Elric gets up slowly, his joints creaking. He opens the door to reveal a young cooper named William, his face pale and slick with sweat in the torchlight. "It's my wife, Eleanor," he gasps out of breath. "The midwife is with her, but it's been a day and a night. The baby won't come. She's losing strength. This is the summons you have come to dread. Childbirth. This is not your domain. This is the sacred, secret world of women, ruled by midwives and female kin. A male healer, let alone an apprentice, is only ever called when things have gone terribly, horribly wrong. Your presence is an admission of failure, a symbol of impending tragedy." Elric looks at you. "You go," he says, his voice flat. "The midwife knows more than I do. Take the borage water for strength. And pray." He is not being cruel. He is being practical. An old man's presence is no better than a young man's, and your legs are faster. He hands you a small flask. He knows, and you know, that you are not being sent as a healer. You are being sent as a witness. You grab your satchel and follow William at a half-run through the dark, muddy lanes. His cottage is small but well kept. As you approach, you can hear a low, rhythmic chanting sound from within, and underneath it, a woman's exhausted groan. William pushes the door open and ushers you in, then retreats back outside, wringing his hands. He is not allowed in. The birthing room is a woman's world. The air inside is suffocatingly hot and thick with the smell of sweat, fear, and boiling herbs. A single tallow candle and the glowing embers of the hearth cast flickering, monstrous shadows on the walls. The room is crowded. 2 older women, likely Eleanor's mother and aunt, are kneeling in a corner, murmuring prayers to Saint Margaret, the patron saint of childbirth. Presiding over everything is the midwife, a woman named Edith, with a face like a weathered map and eyes that have seen everything. She is the absolute authority here. You feel about as welcome as a fox in a henhouse, and just as useful. On the low bed, Eleanor is a pale shape under a wool blanket, her hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, her face a mask of agony and depletion. Her groans are no longer sharp cries of pain but the deep, animal sounds of a body pushed beyond its limits. Edith the midwife turns to you, her expression not hostile, but weary and appraising. "The babe is turned wrong, I think," she says, her voice a low rumble. "And her strength is gone." This is the brutal reality of childbirth before modern medicine. A breech birth, or any number of other complications, was very often a death sentence for both mother and child. This is the core historical fact of this world. Childbirth was the single greatest killer of women of childbearing age. You are completely, utterly out of your depth. Your knowledge of humors, of herbs for coughs and salves for boils, is useless here. You could hold the uroscopy flask of her urine to the light and declare her humors perturbed. But that would be like telling a drowning man he's a bit damp. This is a raw, physical crisis, a mechanical problem, and you have no tools to solve it. Still, you must do something. You must perform your role. You kneel by the bed, trying to look wise. You feel Eleanor's pulse. It's thready and fast. You offer her a sip of the borage water Elric sent, meant to fortify the heart and spirits. She barely has the strength to swallow. The midwife, meanwhile, is employing her own medicine, a blend of deep experience and powerful ritual. You see her take a long, faded blue ribbon from her basket. This is a quirky tidbit of the era's faith-based medicine. The ribbon, she explains to the weeping mother, has been blessed at a shrine and is the exact length of the girdle of the Virgin Mary, a holy relic believed to aid in difficult labors. She lays the ribbon carefully across Eleanor's swollen belly, chanting a prayer as she does so. To you, it seems like a desperate, magical gesture. To these women, it is the most powerful intervention imaginable. It is a direct appeal to the highest chord in heaven. Hours crawl by. The candle burns down, and one of the women replaces it. The air grows thicker. You are a silent statue in the corner, a useless male effigy of a medicine that has no answers. Your very presence is a testament to the limits of your craft. The midwife, Edith, works tirelessly. She massages Eleanor's belly with warm oil. She changes the sweat-soaked linens. She speaks to her in a constant, low, encouraging murmur, a stream of praise, prayer, and commands. She is a general, a priestess, and a mother all at once. Historians still argue whether the slow encroachment of male physicians into the birthing room, which would begin in later centuries, was a genuine attempt to apply new science or a power grab to control a traditionally female domain of expertise. Watching Edith, with her practical skills and deep psychological connection to her patient, you can't imagine what a university-trained physician with his books of Galen could possibly add to this room, other than arrogance and a lancet. Just as the first hint of dawn grazed the sky, something changes. Eleanor gives a different kind of cry, not of exhaustion, but of effort. A primal, focused scream. Edith is there instantly, her voice sharp and clear. Now, child. Push now. For your baby. Saint Margaret is with you. The other women's prayers rise in volume. The room is filled with a terrifying, focused energy. You are frozen, a spectator at the most terrifying and sacred event you have ever witnessed. And then, in a rush of fluid and blood, it's over. A small, slick, purple-gray creature slides into the midwife's waiting, expert hands. For a heart-stopping moment, there is silence. The only sound is Eleanor's ragged gasps. Then, Edith gives the baby a firm slap, and the silence is shattered by a thin, furious wail. The tension in the room breaks like a physical thing. The women sob with relief, their prayers turning to thanks. Edith, with a speed that amazes you, cleans the infant, ties the cord, and wraps the squalling, squirming baby, a boy, in a clean linen cloth. She places him on his mother's breast. Eleanor, tears streaming down her face, touches her son's cheek with a trembling finger, a faint smile on her exhausted lips. You have just witnessed a miracle, and your primary contribution was not fainting. The women now move with quiet efficiency, cleaning the mother, clearing the soiled linens, completely ignoring you. Your part in this drama, is over. You were the totem of last resort, and now that the crisis has passed, you are once again an awkward outsider. You slip out of the cottage. The coins from the Cooper William feel heavy and unearned in your pouch. You're still shaken by the raw intensity of the childbirth, by the stark realization of your own uselessness in the face of such a fundamental crisis. Elric listens to your tale, grunts, and says, "Good. You learned something. You learned that sometimes the best tool in your bag is the one you don't use." It's his version of a profound philosophical lesson. He then informs you that it's market day, and your services will be required. Not for anything as profound as birth, but for something much more common, much more public, and in its own way, just as brutal. Today, you get to be the tooth puller. If childbirth is a private, sacred horror, tooth extraction is a public spectacle. It's part surgery, part street performance, part strongman act. You and Elric pack a different kind of bag today. No delicate uroscopy flasks. Instead, you pack the heavy iron tools, a fearsome assortment of pliers, elevators, and pelicans. A cruel-looking claw and fulcrum device named for its resemblance to the bird's beak. You also pack a small drum, a bottle of cheap, potent spirits, and a jar of clove oil. The village market is a chaotic explosion of life. Farmers are selling pigs that squeal in protest. Merchants have laid out bolts of rough cloth, and the air is thick with the smell of grilling onions, livestock, and unwashed humanity. You and Elric set up your stage near the edge of the market, a slightly elevated patch of ground where a crowd can gather. Elric bangs the drum a few times, a loud, rhythmic thump-thump-thump that cuts through the market chatter. This is your advertisement. It's the medieval equivalent of a flashing neon sign that says, "Agonizing dental work done here." A grim sort of joke you make to yourself is that at least your marketing is honest. A small crowd begins to form, a mixture of the genuinely suffering and the morbidly curious. No one wants to be the first. Finally, a burly farmhand, his face swollen on one side, is pushed forward by his friends. He's been drinking, you can smell it on his breath, but not enough to mask the pain in his eyes. Elric, the seasoned showman, takes over. "Step right up, my lad," he booms, his voice suddenly full and theatrical. A vile humor has taken root in your jaw. A worm of torment burrows in the bone. But fear not, for we have the iron cure. This is the mainstream historical belief about tooth decay. It wasn't caused by sugar or bacteria, but by tiny, invisible tooth worms that gnawed away at the tooth from the inside. Therefore, the only cure was to evict the worm and its corrupted home entirely. The farmhand sits on the low stool you've brought, his friends hooting and offering encouragement. You are the assistant in this grim theater. Your first job is to apply the anesthetic. You dip a wad of cotton in the clove oil and press it against the man's swollen gum. The oil has a genuine, mild numbing effect, but its main purpose is ritual. It's the ceremonial preparation. Next, you offer the man a long swig from the bottle of spirits. He drinks deeply. This is the real anesthetic. It won't stop the pain, but hopefully, it will dull his memory of it. Now for the main event. Elric peers into the man's mouth, using a small metal probe to tap at the teeth. The man yelps when he finds the culprit, a blackened, broken molar. "Aha! The villain's lair," Elric proclaims to the crowd. He selects a particularly vicious-looking pair of pliers from the bag. He positions the pliers, getting a firm grip on what remains of the tooth. He plants his feet. He looks at you. Hold his head, he commands. You move behind the stool and clamp your hands on either side of the man's head, holding it steady against your chest. You can feel the man's whole body tense up, his muscles like stone. He grips the edges of the stool, his knuckles white. Then Elric pulls. It's not a clean, quick pop. It's a sickening, grinding, cracking sound. The man lets out a muffled roar of pain, his body bucking against you. You hold on tight, your own teeth clenched. Elric grunts with effort, twisting and pulling, this whole body thrown into the effort. The crowd gasps. For a horrible second, you think the man's jaw is going to break. Then, with a final, wet crunch, the tooth comes free. Elric holds it up triumphantly for the crowd to see. A bloody, multi-rooted horror held in the grip of the pliers. Behold, the seed of the corruption is cast out, he yells. The crowd cheers, a mixture of relief and macabre excitement. The farmhand spits a great gob of blood onto the ground, his face pale, but a look of dazed relief spreading across it. The constant, gnawing ache is gone, replaced by a raw, clean, catastrophic pain that will, eventually, fade. His friend slaps him on the back and hands Elric a coin. You get to clean the tools. You wipe the blood and bits of gum from the pliers, your stomach churning. This is medicine as a spectator sport. The first patient breaks the ice. Soon, you have a small queue. A woman with a painful front tooth, a young boy whose baby tooth refuses to fall out, an old man who wants the last of his rotten stumps removed so he can eat without paying. You fall into a rhythm. You are the holder of heads, the pourer of spirits, the cleaner of bloody iron. Then, a young woman approaches, shy and clearly embarrassed. She doesn't have a swollen jaw, but she points to her front teeth. They are yellowed and stained. She is getting married soon, and she wants a beautiful smile. Elric, ever the opportunist, has a solution for this, too. This is the quirky and horrifying tidbit of medieval cosmetic dentistry. He produces a small pot of a special paste. He calls it Aqua Fortis paste. He doesn't tell her what's in it. He told you once. It's a highly diluted form of nitric acid, mixed with a fine, abrasive powder. You are tasked with applying it. You take a rough cloth, dab it in the paste, and instruct the woman to hold her lips back. You then scrub her teeth with the acid paste. The effect is immediate and dramatic. The acid literally eats away the top layer of stained enamel, revealing a whiter, brighter surface underneath. The woman looks at her reflection in a small piece of polished metal you hold up for her, and she beams, a genuinely beautiful smile. She pays happily. You feel a pang of guilt. You know that you have just permanently weakened her teeth, stripping them of their natural protection, and ensuring she will be a future customer for the pliers. It's a brilliant, cynical business model. Historians still argue about the exact status of the tooth puller or dental surgeon. Were they seen as a branch of medicine, or were they more akin to barbers, who also performed minor surgery like bloodletting? The lines were incredibly blurry. In the marketplace, surrounded by cheering gawkers, you feel less like a healer and more like a carnival worker, a purveyor of violent relief and temporary beauty. As the sun begins to set, you pack up your gruesome tools. Your back aches from leaning over and holding heads. Your hands are stained and smell of clove oil, cheap spirits, and other people's blood. You have the pouch of coins from your brutal day as a tooth puller sits on the table, a small pile of metallic proof that pain can be profitable. You're settling back into the familiar, quiet rhythm of cottage life, grinding herbs, tending the fire, trying to forget the sickening crunch of a molar leaving a jawbone. You've almost convinced yourself that your life will remain in this realm of common aches and public agonies. But your world is about to shrink from the noisy, anonymous marketplace to the silent, suffocating confines of a single, terrifyingly important room. It comes not as a frantic peasant pounding on the door, but as a quiet, authoritative knock. Elric opens it to find a man dressed in the fine wool livery of the local lord, Sir Robert. The man's face is impassive, but his presence alone is an earthquake. People from the manor do not visit your hovel. They summon. Sir Robert is unwell, the servant says, his voice crisp and devoid of emotion. He requests the healer's presence at the hall. Immediately. He doesn't say, Elric. He says the healer. And Elric, with a glance at your wide eyes, makes a decision. My apprentice will attend me, he says. It is not a request. You are going. A cold knot of fear tightens in your stomach. This is not a gouty baker you can condescend to, or a poor widow you can pity. This is the man who owns the village, the land you walk on, the very air you breathe. His power is absolute. In his world, a healer who fails is not just a disappointment. He is a potential liability, a failure that could have consequences. This is the ultimate high-stakes house call. You quickly gather your finest supplies. Not the common herbs, but the precious, expensive ones. A small packet of cinnamon for warming the spirits, a vial of rose water for cooling the brow, your cleanest linen for bandages. You grab your best uroscopy flask and your shiniest lancet. You are trying to arm yourself with the appearance of competence, a flimsy shield against the terror you feel. Walking to the manor hall is like crossing into another country. You leave the world of mud and thatch behind, passing through a stone gatehouse into a clean, orderly courtyard. The hall itself is a towering structure of stone and timber, its windows made not of oiled parchment, but of actual glass, something you've only ever seen in the church. The air inside smells of beeswax, roasted meat, and money. It's so quiet. The sounds of poverty are absent. There is no crying baby, no shouting, no chickens underfoot. The silence is more intimidating than any noise. The servant leads you up a winding stone staircase to the solar, the private living quarters of the Lord and his family. The room is vast. A huge four-poster bed with heavy velvet curtains dominates the space. A woven tapestry depicting a bloody boar hunt covers one entire wall. The floor is covered in sweet-smelling rushes mixed with lavender and chamomile. By the standards of your hovel, this is a palace beyond imagining. By the standards of a king, it is a drafty, cold stone box. It's all relative. Sir Robert is in the bed, propped up on a mountain of pillows. He is a man in his 50s, normally robust and loud. A man you've only ever seen on horseback, radiating power. Today, he looks small and terribly mortal. His face is gray, he's shivering under a pile of furs, and his breathing is labored. His wife, Lady Eleanor, a different, much more formidable Eleanor than the cooper's wife, stands by the bed, her face a mask of controlled anxiety. Elric bows low. You, copying him, bow so low you almost lose your balance. A nervous tic you didn't know you had. Lady Eleanor looks at the two of you, her eyes lingering on your youthful, terrified face with a flicker of doubt. He was hunting yesterday, she says, her voice sharp. He took a chill. Now this fever, it will not break. Elric steps forward, his entire demeanor changed. He is no longer the gruff, mud-stained village healer. He is a solemn, serious physician. He feels the Lord's pulse, examines his tongue, listens to his chest. He performs the rituals of his craft with a slow, deliberate gravity. He then turns to you. The Metula, he says quietly. A servant hands you the chamber pot from beneath the great bed. It is ornate silver. The urine it contains is for the lord of the manor, but it looks and smells just as humble as anyone else's. You decant a sample into your pristine glass flask, your hands shaking so badly you're afraid you'll drop it. You hold it up to the light of the expensive window, trying to look like you know what you're doing. The color is dark, reddish yellow. Citrinous, bordering on rufous. There is froth. There is sediment. You bring it to Elric. He studies it for a long moment. The Lord's blood is overheated, he declares. The choleric humor is dominant, boiling the blood and putting undue strain on the vital spirits. He has given the illness a name, a cause. He has contained the raw fear in the room within the familiar framework of the humors. Now comes the terrifying part, the treatment. In the village, a fever might be met with a cooling poultice or a change in diet. But this is Sir Robert. The illness is severe. His status demands a powerful, immediate intervention. We must bleed him, Elric says. Lady Eleanor does not question him. This is the mainstream historical fact of aristocratic medicine. For the wealthy and powerful, treatments were often more aggressive and more dangerous. A lord's body was considered more robust, capable of withstanding heroic interventions like copious bloodletting that might kill a commoner. It was a sign of status to receive the most dramatic cures. You are the one who has to prepare the tools. You lay out a clean cloth, placing the lancet and the bleeding bowl upon it. The bowl is your own pewter one, and it looks cheap and pathetic next to the silver and velvet of the room. You tie the tourniquet around Sir Robert's arm. His skin is soft and pale, not like the sun-baked, muscular arms of the villagers you are used to. His veins are thin and delicate. Elric will perform the cut. He trusts your hand for a blacksmith, but not for a lord. He takes the lancet, murmurs a quick prayer, and with a skill you have to admire, opens the vein. The blood that flows into the bowl seems impossibly bright against the dull pewter. You watch the level rise. 6 ounces. 8 ounces. Elric looks at Sir Robert's face, judging his strength. More, he whispers. 10 ounces. 12. You have never taken so much blood from one person. Sir Robert groans, and his head lolls to the side. He has swooned. Lady Eleanor gasps. Have you killed him? No, my lady. Elric says calmly, though you see a bead of sweat on his own brow. The swoon is a sign that the corrupt humor has been routed. The body is cleansing itself. This is the quirky, terrifying logic of heroic medicine. Fainting during bloodletting wasn't seen as a dangerous side effect of hypovolemic shock. It was interpreted as a positive sign that the treatment was working, that the body was yielding to the cure. You bandage the Lord's arm and help Elric apply cooling compresses of rosewater. The bag of coins from Sir Robert is a source of both comfort and anxiety. It's more money than you've ever seen in one place, enough to buy a pig and still have silver to spare. It sits on Elric's table, a constant reminder of your successful gamble at the manor. For a few weeks, you enjoy a rare period of relative prosperity and, even more intoxicating, a sliver of newfound respect in the village. The story of Sir Robert's dramatic recovery, embellished with each telling, has elevated your status. You are no longer just the herb grinder's boy. You are the apprentice to the man who stared down the Lord's fever and won. This feeling, you will soon learn, is as fleeting as morning mist. Your next significant patient is a woman named Isabel, the wife of a weaver. She's a quiet, well-liked woman, known for her skill at the loom and her gentle nature. Her husband comes to you in distress. Isabel has been suffering from a pain in her belly for months, a pain that is growing steadily worse. She can barely eat, and she's losing weight at an alarming rate. You and Elric go to their tidy cottage. Isabel is lying on her pallet, her face pale and drawn, her eyes large in her thinning face. The diagnosis is difficult. The pain is deep within her, a place your hands and eyes cannot reach. You perform a uroscopy. Her urine is dark and cloudy, a sign of a deep humoral disturbance, but it offers no specific clues. Elric palpates her abdomen. She cries out when he presses on her right side. He diagnoses a blockage, a cold and hard obstruction, in her liver or bowels, causing her natural humors to putrefy. He suspects an excess of cold, dry black bile, the melancholic humor, congealing into a knot of disease. The treatment plan is based on this diagnosis. You must apply heat and moisture to counteract the cold and dryness of the black bile. You prepare hot poultices of bran and mallow root to be placed on her belly, hoping to soften the internal hardness. You brew decoctions of warming herbs like ginger and chamomile for her to drink. You advise a diet of moistening foods, broths, pottages, and boiled chicken. For a few days, Isabel seems to rally. The warmth of the poultices soothes her, and she is able to take a little broth. Her husband is full of gratitude. You feel that familiar, dangerous glow of competence returning. You have diagnosed the problem according to the ancient wisdom of the humors, and your treatment seems to be working. But the improvement is temporary. The pain returns, fiercer than before. The swelling in her belly grows, becoming hard and tender to the touch. She is too weak to even sip the broth now. You and Elric try everything in your arsenal. You give her purgatives, harsh concoctions of senna and scammony, to try and force the obstruction out. The result is only to weaken her further, racking her frail body with cramps that produce nothing. You even, in a moment of desperation, apply 2 leeches to her abdomen, hoping to draw out the bad blood that is feeding the sickness. The leeches drink their fill, fall off, and Isabel is no better. She dies on a Sunday morning, just as the church bells are calling the village to Mass. Her death is quiet and slow, a fading ember rather than a sudden snuffing of a flame. Her husband is heartbroken, sitting by her side, holding her hand, his face a mask of desolate grief. You did everything your training taught you. You followed the principles of humoral theory perfectly. But you failed. Again. And this time, the failure feels different. Thomas the farmer died quickly from an infected wound. It was a violent, obvious crisis. Sir Robert's fever was a battle you won. But Isabel's decline was slow, inexorable, a siege you could not lift. You had a name for her illness, a cold obstruction. But you feel in your gut that the name was just a label you put on a mystery you did not understand at all. You pack your bag in silence, the husband's quiet sobs following you out the door. As you walk back through the village, you notice people looking at you differently. The whispers start almost immediately. They are not the whispers of awe you heard after healing Sir Robert. They are a different kind, darker and sharper. She was fine until they started with their potions. A woman mutters to another as you pass, just loud enough for you to hear. 2 healers for 1 woman. Another man says at the alehouse that night, his voice carrying. And still she dies. Curious, isn't it? The problem is one of perception and expectation. When you treat a common ailment like a cough, no one thinks twice. When you pull a tooth, the transaction is clear. When you save a great lord, your success is amplified. But when you are called to a long, lingering illness and the patient dies, the narrative shifts. You weren't just a healer who failed. You became a part of the story of the illness itself. Your presence, your potions, your treatments, they are now entangled with the death. This is where the whispers turn from simple gossip to something far more dangerous. The mainstream historical fact is that throughout the Middle Ages, the line between medicine, magic, and religion was porous. A healer used herbs, prayers, and charms. But if that healer's patient died, especially under strange or lingering circumstances, the question could arise: were they using white magic for healing or black magic for harm? A few days after Isabel's death, you are gathering herbs near the woods when one of the village women, a known gossip named Matilda, sees you. She makes the sign of the cross and hurries away, pulling her child close to her. The gesture is a physical blow. She is warding off evil. She is warding off you. The quirky, terrifying tidbit of this world is how easily suspicion could fester and grow, fed by fear and ignorance. Did you look at Isabel's cow with an envious eye? Did you mutter strange words over her potions that weren't prayers to a saint? Why did you use leeches, those dark, blood-sucking creatures of the mud? Suddenly, every tool of your trade can be reinterpreted through a lens of malice. Your knowledge, once a source of pride, becomes a source of suspicion. Why do you know so much about the secret properties of roots and leaves? Who taught you? An honest man, or something else? The whispers coil around the fact that you and Elric have that bag of silver from Sir Robert. They get rich when the Lord lives, the whispers say. But what if they get something else when a poor woman dies? The logic is twisted, born of grief and envy, but it's powerful. Elric sees the change. He becomes more withdrawn, his face grimmer than usual. Say nothing, he tells you one night, his voice low and intense. Look no one in the eye. Do your work. This will pass. But you are not so sure. The fear is a cold thing in your belly. An accusation of witchcraft is not a simple matter of a bad reputation. It can lead to an official inquiry by the church, or worse, to mob justice. All it would take is one more unfortunate death, one more cow that sickens, one more crop that fails. Historians still argue about the frequency and nature of medieval witch trials, distinguishing them from the later. The shadow of suspicion lingers over you and Elric like a damp fog. The whispers haven't erupted into open accusations, but the fear remains, a constant, low-level hum beneath the surface of your daily life. Villagers who once greeted you now avert their eyes. Fewer people come to the cottage with minor complaints, preferring to suffer their boils and coughs in silence rather than seek help from the unlucky healers. This forced quiet time, this professional isolation, pushes you deeper into the theoretical side of your craft. If you cannot understand the mystery of Isabel's death, perhaps the answer lies not in your herbs, but in a deeper understanding of the body itself. It's time to study anatomy. The problem is, you have to do it without a body. The dissection of human cadavers is a practice shrouded in taboo and religious prohibition. The mainstream historical fact is that human dissection for medical knowledge was incredibly rare in the medieval period. While a few universities in Italy, like Bologna, were beginning to perform occasional, highly regulated public dissections, this was the absolute cutting edge of academic medicine, a world away from your muddy village. For you, the human body is a sacred vessel, created in God's image. To open it up after death is seen as a profound act of desecration, a mutilation of the temple that will house the soul upon the resurrection. So, your anatomical knowledge must be built on a rickety scaffold of theory, animal analogy, and forbidden whispers. Elric possesses one of your cottage's greatest treasures, a single, hand-copied manuscript page from a book by the ancient Roman physician, Galen. The page is yellowed, the ink is faded, and the Latin is dense and full of terms you barely understand. But on it is a crude, simplified drawing of the human organs. You stare at it for hours, trying to memorize the shapes and their supposed locations. Here is the heart, the source of vital heat. Here is the liver, the great, five-lobed organ, or so Galen believed, that manufactures the blood. Here are the kidneys, the strainers of the humors. It's a map of a country you have never been allowed to visit. And it's a deeply flawed map. Galen, for all his genius, based most of his anatomical work on the dissection of Barbary apes and pigs, because human dissection was also forbidden in his time. He assumed human anatomy was largely the same. He was wrong. His book describes a human jaw made of two bones, because an ape's is. It describes a liver with 5 lobes, like a pig's, not the 2 primary lobes of a human. You are learning a system that is fundamentally, structurally incorrect. But it is the only system you have. To question Galen is to question a pillar of medical knowledge that has stood for 1,000 years. To supplement this flawed text, you turn to the only bodies you are allowed to open: animals. When a farmer slaughters a pig, you are there, a grim spectator, watching the butcher work. You try to match the steaming, coiled mess of entrails to the neat diagrams on your parchment. See, Elric will say, pointing to the pig's spleen, that is where the black bile is made. See how dark it is. You nod, but the reality is a jumble of glistening membranes and unfamiliar shapes. It looks nothing like the tidy drawing. One day, you are called to treat a sheep that has died of a mysterious wasting sickness. The shepherd, fearing it might spread to his flock, gives you permission to examine it. This is your first real, solo dissection. With a sharp skinning knife, you make the first cut. The act feels transgressive, even on an animal. You open the abdominal cavity and are met with a confusion of organs. You identify the heart, the lungs, the stomach. But you also find things that don't fit Galen's map. You see the complex, multi-chambered stomach of a ruminant, something completely alien to human anatomy. You hold the sheep's small, bean-shaped liver in your hand. It does not have 5 lobes. You feel a flicker of cognitive dissonance, a tiny crack in the foundation of your knowledge. You saw it with your own eyes. The liver is not as the book describes. You mention this to Elric. He frowns. It was a diseased liver, he says dismissively. The sickness changed its shape. Galen described a healthy one. It is an easy, convenient explanation. It is always easier to assume the specific example is flawed than to question the universal rule. This is the quirky, frustrating tidbit of your anatomical education. You are constantly trying to fit the square peg of reality into the round hole of ancient authority. When you butcher a chicken for the pot, you see its heart, but you also see the gizzard and crop, organs humans lack. Instead of questioning the human map, you simply learn to edit what you see, to discard the inconvenient data that doesn't fit the established model. Your education is not an observation, but in confirmation bias. Your quest for knowledge leads you to even shadier territory. You hear whispers of a man in a nearby town, a butcher who also serves as an unofficial executioner. It is said that for a high price, he will sometimes look the other way, allowing a desperate student or physician a brief, hurried look at the dismembered body of a criminal. The thought is both thrilling and terrifying. To see the inside of a man, to finally match the drawing to the reality, it's a temptation of the highest order. Historians still argue about the extent of this black market in human bodies during the Middle Ages. While official records are scarce for obvious reasons, anecdotal evidence and later accounts suggest that a clandestine trade in anatomical knowledge, fueled by grave robbing and collusion with executioners, did exist on the fringes of society. It was a dangerous, high-stakes game. You discuss it with Elric in hushed tones. He is old and cautious. The accusation of witchcraft still hangs over you. To be caught meddling with the corpse of a hanged man would be a death sentence, proof of demonic pacts and necromancy. Knowledge is not worth your life, he warns. We treat the humors, not the vessels that hold them. It is enough to know where to apply the leech. You do not need to see the pipe it drains. But you are young and hungry for answers. The ghost of Isabel and her mysterious obstruction haunts you. What was it really? A hardened organ? A tumor? A knot in her intestines? Without seeing the inside, you are forever guessing, forever fighting shadows. You feel like a man trying to fix a complex clock by listening to its ticks and looking at the face, without ever being allowed to see the gears inside. So you study your single parchment, you observe the butcher with his pigs, and you try to build a coherent picture in your mind. You learn the names of things you've never seen. You can trace the supposed path of the blood from the liver, where it is made, to the heart, where it is infused with vital spirit, and then out to the body, where it is consumed. You don't know about circulation, about the role of the lungs in oxygenation, about the heart as a pump. You believe the blood ebbs and flows like the tide. One afternoon, you're sketching the organs from memory in the dirt floor of the cottage, trying to get the relationships right. You draw the 5-lobed liver, the 2-chambered heart, as Galen taught. The web-like, the cloud of suspicion over you has thinned, but not entirely dispersed. Life has settled into a precarious new normal, a routine of cautious interactions, and the quiet study of your flawed anatomical charts. And just when you think you have a handle on your miserable but predictable existence, a new kind of threat arrives. It doesn't come as a sickness or an accusation. It rolls into the village on a brightly painted cart, pulled by a tired-looking horse, accompanied by the sound of a lute and a booming, cheerful voice. The traveling quack has arrived. His name is Dr. Basilius, or so he calls himself. He is everything you and Elric are not. He is dressed in a flamboyant robe of deep purple velvet, with a pointed hat adorned with astrological symbols. He has a neatly trimmed beard, a charismatic smile that shows off a surprising number of his own teeth, and a voice that drips with honeyed confidence. His cart is a mobile theater of medicine, hung with banners depicting miraculous cures, jars of monstrous-looking worms allegedly passed by his patients, and a large, framed diploma from the University of Salerno and Points East, which you are fairly certain does not exist. He sets up in the middle of the marketplace, in the very spot where you and Elric perform your grim tooth-pulling. But instead of a drum and a bowl of blood, he has a stage. He unrolls charts of the zodiac, anatomical drawings far more detailed and colorful than your sad Galenic page, and he begins his performance. "Good people of this fine village," he booms, his voice carrying to every corner of the square. "Are you tired of the gray potions and grim pronouncements of your local hedge witches? Are you suffering from melancholic humors, sluggish livers, or wandering wombs? Do you seek a cure born not of guesswork, but of the secret sciences of Arabia and the wisdom of the ancients?" A crowd gathers, drawn by the spectacle. He is a masterful showman. He juggles, he tells jokes. Your internal quota of 3 light jokes per 1,000 words feels woefully inadequate compared to this man's constant stream of wit, and he dazzles them with a torrent of impressive-sounding words. He speaks of arch-spirits, astral influences, and the microcosmic resonance between man and the stars. It's humoral theory, but dressed up in a glittering new vocabulary that makes your own explanations sound drab and rustic. Then, he brings out his product. It is a small, dark bottle filled with a thick, syrupy liquid. He holds it aloft. "Behold, the elixir of life, the panacea, my own secret formula, aqua vitae mirabilis," he proclaims. "Made from over 100 rare and exotic ingredients, including powdered Egyptian mummy, unicorn horn, and the distilled essence of the sun's rays captured at dawn." You watch from the edge of the crowd, a feeling of dread mixing with a grudging admiration. He is a magnificent liar. The mainstream historical fact is that this era was rife with such itinerant charlatans. With no regulation, anyone could call themselves a doctor. They moved from town to town, selling hope in a bottle, staying just long enough to make a profit before their cures were revealed as useless. His sales pitch is a work of genius. He claims the elixir can cure anything. Gout. It dissolves the crystallized humors. A weak heart. It fortifies the vital spirits. Sadness. It balances the black bile. Infertility? It corrects the astral imbalances of the womb. It is the perfect medicine, a single solution to every problem. Unlike your own complicated, contradictory system of specific herbs for specific ailments. To prove its power, he needs a volunteer. He spots Martin the baker in the crowd, the man whose gout you treated weeks ago. Martin, you can see, is still limping slightly. You, sir, Basilius calls out. You have the look of a man of substance, but your gait is troubled. A fiery humor has settled in your foot, has it not? Martin, flattered to be noticed, hobbles forward. Basilius gives him a sympathetic look, then offers him a small cup of the elixir. Martin drinks it down. Basilius then begins to massage the baker's foot, all the while keeping up a stream of distracting, hypnotic patter about the flow of energy and the expulsion of toxins. After a minute, he commands, "Now, stand up and walk, good sir." Martin stands. He takes a tentative step, then another. A look of genuine surprise crosses his face. "The pain, it's lessened," he exclaims. The crowd murmurs in amazement. Basilius beams. "Of course. The panacea never fails. You know exactly what just happened. The elixir is likely a mixture of strong wine or brandy, honey, and some bitter, harmless herbs." The alcohol gave Martin a momentary feeling of warmth and euphoria. The confident, theatrical massage was a powerful act of suggestion, and Martin, wanting to believe, felt a temporary relief. It's a trick, but it's a brilliant one. Martin the baker, your former patient, buys 2 large bottles on the spot. One by one, your regular patients are drawn in. The woman who came to you for her headaches buys a bottle. The farmer you bled for his fiery collar is captivated. They are flocking to this man, handing over their hard-earned coins for his promises, seduced by his certainty. You and Elric, with your cautious diagnoses, your bitter potions that take weeks to work, if they work at all, and your history of grim failures, cannot compete. This is the quirky, and for you, infuriating, tidbit of this encounter, the power of marketing. Basilius isn't selling medicine, he's selling a story. His story is exciting, exotic, and full of hope. Your story is one of mud, blood, and a 50-50 chance you won't make things worse. He is a fantasy. You are the miserable reality. It's not a fair fight. Later that day, you see Elric staring out the cottage door, watching Basilius's gaily painted cart. His face is a mask of weary resignation. He will be gone in a week, Elric says, and we will be left to clean up his mess. He explains that when the elixir wears off, or when the strong spirits in it start to damage their livers, the villagers will come back. But they will come back poorer, sicker, and with their faith in any kind of healing even more eroded. Historians still argue about the true role of the quack in medieval society. Were they purely predatory villains, exploiting the sick and desperate? Or did they, in their own way, provide a valuable service, offering hope, comfort, and a powerful placebo effect that sometimes genuinely helped people feel better, even if the medicine itself was inert? Watching Basilius charm a coin from a widow who you know needs it for food, you lean toward predatory villain. A few days later, your worst fears are realized. The mother of the boy with the lung fever, Agnes, the woman who gave you that single, precious egg, comes to see you. She is holding an empty bottle from Basilius's cart. Her eyes are full of a new kind of despair. I spent my last coin on it, she whispers, her voice breaking. He said it would burn the phlegm from his chest. But he is worse. He coughs up blood. Dr. Basilius and his painted cart are gone, having vanished in the night as quietly as they arrived, leaving behind a trail of empty bottles and shattered hopes. As Elric predicted, the village is left to deal with the aftermath. The baker's gout has returned with a vengeance, and the woman with the headaches feels foolish and poorer. The sickest, like the widow's son, are now beyond anyone's help. The brief, bright flare of the quack's visit has left the village's collective faith in healing smoldering in a pile of damp, cynical ash. You feel a bitter sense of vindication, but it's a cold comfort. You are sweeping the dirt floor of the cottage, trying to restore some sense of order to your world, when a new kind of chaos erupts. It starts with a distant shout, then another, and then the unmistakable, terrifying sound of ringing steel. Not the rhythmic clang of the blacksmith's hammer, but the sharp, discordant clash of swords. You and Elric rush to the door. Villagers are running, seeking shelter in their homes, their faces etched with panic. A small group of men, about a dozen, are spilling into the market square. They are not soldiers in a proper army. They are local men, armed with a motley collection of rusty helmets, leather jacks, billhooks, and agricultural tools hastily repurposed for war. It's the levy from your own village, led by Sir Robert's brash young son, and they have just clashed with a similar party from the neighboring barony. The fight is not a grand, noble battle. It's a clumsy, brutal, pathetic affair. The mainstream historical fact is that most medieval warfare wasn't the stuff of epic poems. It was small-scale, localized violence, cattle raids, disputes over land boundaries or milling rights, petty feuds between minor lords that flared into brief, bloody skirmishes. This is one such skirmish. It's a brawl with deadly weapons, fought over a few acres of grazing land that both lords claim as their own. The fight is over as quickly as it began. The rival party, outnumbered, retreats, leaving behind a scene of carnage in the middle of the village. The ground is churned to mud, and scattered across it are the casualties. 3 men lie still, their quarrels with this world settled forever. 4 others are wounded, groaning, bleeding, trying to drag themselves to safety. And just like that, you are no longer a healer of sickness. You are a battlefield surgeon. Get the bag. Elric barks, his voice sharp with an urgency you haven't heard since the night Sir Robert was ill. The wine. All the linen we have. The needle. You sprint back inside, your hands shaking as you grab the supplies. When you return, the village women are already tending to their own sons, husbands, brothers. They are crying, praying, trying to staunch wounds with strips torn from their aprons. You and Elric are the only ones with any semblance of medical knowledge. Your first patient is a young man, a shepherd you know named Peter. He's sitting against the wall of the alehouse, his face ashen, staring in disbelief at his own arm. A crude, iron-tipped arrow is sticking straight through his bicep. It entered one side and came out the other. Elric kneels beside him. "Don't look at it, son," he says, his voice surprisingly gentle. He examines the wound. The arrowhead is a simple, barbed bodkin point, designed to punch through leather armor. This is the problem. It went in easily, but the barbs mean it won't come out the way it came. We can't pull it back, Elric states, matter-of-factly. We have to push it through. He looks at you. You have the steadier hand for this. The terror is absolute. You have to intentionally worsen a man's injury to save him. Peter's friends hold him down. You take a deep breath, trying to steady your nerve. You take the shaft of the arrow in both hands. "I am sorry, Peter," you whisper. And then you push. Peter screams, a raw, piercing sound of agony that cuts you to the bone. You feel the arrowhead tear through the last layers of muscle and skin. Blood pours from the new, larger exit wound. With the head now clear, you can snap the wooden shaft and pull the rest of it out from the back. The whole procedure takes less than 10 seconds, but it feels like an eternity. Now, you have to treat the wound itself. It's a deep, ugly, torn tunnel through the man's arm. You pour a generous amount of precious wine directly into the wound track, flushing it as best you can. Peter howls again as the alcohol burns. You then take your largest needle, a curved piece of bronze about the length of your finger, and thread it with thick linen thread that you've soaked in the wine. And you begin to sew. Your stitches are crude, big, and ugly. You are not a tailor closing a seam. You are a butcher lashing a piece of meat together. You are just trying to pull the gaping edges of the wound together to stop the bleeding. When you are done, you apply a thick poultice of yarrow, the herb known for centuries as Herba militaris, the soldier's woundwort, and bind the arm tightly. You have done all you can. Now it is up to God and the strength of Peter's own humors whether the wound will fester or heal. You move to the next man. He has a long, shallow gash across his chest from a billhook. It's bleeding profusely but doesn't look deep enough to have damaged his lungs. This is a simpler task. You clean it, stitch it with smaller, neater sutures, and bandage it. The next patient is worse. A man has taken a blow to the head from a mace. His helmet is dented, and there's a bloody, matted mess where his scalp has been laid open to the bone. He is conscious, but dazed, speaking nonsense. This is a head wound. You know from Elric's teachings that these are the most dangerous of all. This is where a quirky and terrifying bit of surgical practice comes in: trepanation. Elric examines the wound, his face grim. He feels the edges of the fractured bone. There is pressure on the brain, he mutters. It must be relieved. Sometimes, for a skull fracture, a healer would attempt to drill or scrape a hole in the skull to relieve pressure or remove bone fragments. It was an incredibly dangerous procedure with a staggeringly high mortality rate. You look at the dazed man, then at the crude tools in your bag. Thankfully, Elric decides against it. "We cannot," he says. "The fracture is too wide." Historians still argue about the rationale and success rate of medieval trepanation. Was it a desperate but sometimes logical attempt to relieve intracranial pressure, or a purely ritualistic act based on the idea of letting evil spirits out of the head? Looking at the man's shattered skull, you suspect it wouldn't matter which it was. The outcome would likely be the same. Instead, you clean the wound as best you can, cover it, and pray. There is nothing more in your power to do. You work for what feels like hours, moving from one broken body to another, your hands and clothes soaked in blood. The market square has become a makeshift hospital, a landscape of pain and fear. You are no longer thinking about humors or astrological charts. This is raw, physical damage. It is plumbing and carpentry. You are plugging holes, sewing rips, and splinting broken supports. As the sun sets, casting long, bloody shadows across the square, you finally finish. The dead have been carried away to the church. The aftermath of the skirmish leaves a pall over the village. The raw grief for the dead is a constant, quiet presence, and the sight of the wounded, Peter with his arm in a sling, another man hobbling on a crutch, is a daily reminder of the violence. Your role in the bloody affair has, for the moment, eclipsed the whispers of witchcraft. You are once again the necessary man, the one who stitched and salved. But respect doesn't fill your stomach, and gratitude is a currency with a very poor exchange rate. The daily, grinding struggle for survival reasserts itself, and you are forced to confront the bleak economics of your profession. Your life is a constant negotiation, a relentless exercise in barter and hope. The pouch of coins from Sir Robert is long gone, spent on a new store of wine for wound cleaning, a small piglet that you hope to raise, and a precious block of salt. Now, you are back to the familiar state of having almost nothing. You live on the margins, your income as unpredictable as the spring weather. A typical transaction begins with a patient arriving at your door. Let's say it's a farmer with a festering boil on his neck. It's a classic case, a hot affliction that needs to be lanced and drained. You perform the small, painful procedure with practiced skill. You clean the wound, apply a drawing poultice of mallow and linseed, and give him a strip of clean linen for a dressing. The work is done. Now comes the awkward part, payment. The farmer, relieved but poorer for the time lost from his fields, rarely has coin. Coin is for taxes, for the Lord's tithe, for the rare market-day luxury. It is not for the likes of you. So the bartering begins. I will bring you a sack of turnips come the harvest, he offers. The harvest is 2 months away. You need to eat now. My larder is bare today, not in 2 months' time. You counter, trying to sound firm but not unsympathetic. He sighs, a sound of weary frustration. My wife has a clutch of new chicks. I can bring you 2 chicks. They are fragile. They could be taken by a fox or a sickness. They require feed that you don't have. But they are something tangible, something alive. You agree. Later that day, he returns with 2 tiny, peeping balls of fluff in a basket. You have been paid. Your net worth has just increased by 2 creatures that will, with luck and a great deal of effort, become a single meal in 3 months' time. This is your 401k plan. Poultry. This is the mainstream historical fact of the medieval rural economy. It was overwhelmingly based on subsistence, barter, and payment in kind. For a village healer, cash was a rarity. Your life was measured in chickens, eggs, sacks of grain, wheels of cheese, and promises of future labor. You become an unwilling expert in the fluctuating value of commodities. A good laying hen is worth more than a tough old rooster. A bushel of wheat is worth more than a bushel of oats. You keep a mental ledger of debts owed to you. The weaver whose daughter you treated for a cough owes you a day of work mending your threadbare robes. The woodcutter whose axe slip you stitched up owes you a pile of firewood for the winter. Chasing these debts is a delicate, often humiliating task. You are not a lord's reeve, collecting rents with the force of law behind you. You are just a healer, asking for what you are owed. and your only leverage is the unspoken threat that you might not come so quickly the next time they call. This constant struggle for payment reinforces your low social status. You are a craftsman, but your craft is invisible. A blacksmith creates a solid, tangible object, a horseshoe, a plowshare. A carpenter builds a sturdy chair. Their value is clear. Your product is the absence of something, the absence of pain, the absence of sickness. It's a much harder thing to put a price on. This is a quirky, frustrating aspect of your job. People are happy to pay for a new pair of shoes, but they resent paying to have their own body fixed, as if health should be their natural state, and you are merely charging them to restore what is rightfully theirs. Your social isolation is profound. You are not truly part of the village community. You are adjacent to it. You are invited into their homes only at times of crisis and fear. You share their most intimate and terrifying moments, childbirth, injury, death, but you are not invited to their weddings or their harvest festivals. To have you at a feast would be like inviting a gravedigger to a christening, a grim reminder of a reality everyone else is trying to forget. The only time you're truly popular is when someone has drunk too much ale and wants to impress their friends by challenging you to a debate on the nature of phlegm. Pro tip: don't engage. You and Elric eat what you can get. Your diet is a strange, unpredictable smorgasbord of your patients' livelihoods. One week you might have a surplus of cheese from a dairy farmer. The next, it's all turnips. You dream of a simple, steady meal of bread and bacon. Historians still argue about the typical standard of living for a non-clerical, non-aristocratic educated professional like a healer or a scribe. The answer is likely that it varied enormously. A university-trained physician in a wealthy city could become rich. A healer in a prosperous town might live comfortably. But for a village healer like you, life is a perpetual state of just about getting by. You are caught in a social and economic trap. You are more educated than the peasants you serve, but you are also entirely dependent on their meager surplus. You have the knowledge of a scholar and the income of a beggar. This precarious existence breeds a certain cynicism in you. You watch the Lord's reeve ride by on his fat horse, his purse full of silver collected from the very people who pay you in eggs. You see the priest, fat and comfortable on the tithes of the faithful. Their authority is solid, their income guaranteed. Your authority is as fragile as a robin's egg, and your income is dependent on the health of your neighbor's chickens. One evening, you are patching the thatch on your own roof, a skill you learned out of sheer necessity. You are using straw given to you by a farmer in exchange for a poultice that eased his aching back. As you work, you see the families of the village gathering, laughing, sharing a communal meal by a bonfire. You can smell their roasting meat. You can hear their songs. And you are up here, alone, on your roof, patching a hole with the payment for a sore back. You look down at your hands. They are calloused from the pestle, stained with herbs, and now scratched from the rough straw. These hands can set a bone, stitch a wound, and deliver a baby, in theory. They hold a universe of secret knowledge, but they cannot seem to grasp a simple, secure life. You are the fixer of everyone else's problems, but you cannot fix your own poverty or your own loneliness. The miserable irony of your life is laid bare against the backdrop of the cheerful village bonfire. You are essential, and you are an outcast. You are wise, and you are destitute. You are the healer, and you are utterly alone. The seasons turn. The piglet you bought with Sir Robert's silver has grown fat, a walking symbol of a temporary prosperity that now seems like a distant memory. The daily rhythm of your life, the bartering for eggs, the solitary meals, the quiet study of your flawed medical texts, has become so ingrained that you can scarcely imagine anything else. Your world is the village, a small, circumscribed stage where you play your part as the necessary outcast. But the world is much larger than your village, and news, like a slow-moving infection, is beginning to travel. It begins as a faint rumor, a whisper carried by a traveling merchant passing through your market, a story told over ale that sounds too fantastical to be true. He speaks of a great sickness in the east, in the distant lands of Cathay and the Tartars. A pestilence so vast and so deadly that it depopulates entire cities, a plague that kills so quickly there is no time for last rites. He describes men who go to bed healthy and are found dead in the morning, their bodies marked with strange, dark swellings. You and the other villagers listen with a mixture of fear and a strange sort of detachment. The East is a place of myth and legend, a world away. It's a story, like the tales of fire-breathing dragons or Prester John. It's terrible, yes, but it's happening over there, to other people. It has no more bearing on your life than a storm on the far side of the moon. But then the stories get closer. A pilgrim, returning from a journey to Rome, stops in your village for a night. He speaks of the great port city of Genoa, of trading ships arriving in Sicily with their crews already dead or dying, their holds filled not with spices and silk, but with a terrifying, invisible cargo. He uses a new, frightening phrase, the great mortality. He describes the symptoms in horrifying detail, and this time, it feels less like a legend and more like a medical treatise from hell. It begins with a fever and a headache, common enough. But then come the swellings, the buboes, hard and painful lumps in the groin, the armpits, or on the neck, growing to the size of an apple. After the swellings, dark splotches, like bruises, appear on the skin. The victim starts to cough up blood. And then, within days, sometimes within hours, comes death. As a healer, you try to process this information through the lens of your training. What kind of humoral imbalance could cause such a swift and catastrophic collapse? A fever suggests an excess of choler or blood. The swellings, the buboes, suggest a blockage, a place where corrupt humors are gathering. The dark sotches, that points to a putrefaction of the black bile, a mortification of the very substance of the body. It sounds like every humoral imbalance happening at once, a complete and total rebellion of the body against itself. It's a disease that breaks all the rules. You discuss it with Elric. He is old, and has seen many sicknesses come and go. The sweating sickness, various poxes, fluxes. But as he listens to the pilgrim's tale, a new kind of gravity settles on his face. There is no cure for this, he says, his voice low. No herb, no bleeding. No prayer can stand against a sickness sent directly by God as a punishment for the world's sins. This is the mainstream historical interpretation that will take hold everywhere. The plague is not a natural phenomenon. It is an act of God, a divine scourge unleashed upon a wicked world. The causes are not humoral. but spiritual, pride, greed, blasphemy, the vanity of fashion, the corruption of the clergy. The only possible cure is repentance. As the months pass, the rumors solidify into terrifying facts. The pestilence is no longer confined to distant ports. It has landed on the continent of Europe and is spreading, inexorably, northwards. It moves along the trade routes, carried by ships, by merchants, by rats, by fleas, by the very air, it seems. You hear of it consuming Florence, of wiping out a third of Paris. The numbers are so large they are incomprehensible. A new kind of fear begins to seep into your village. It's different from the fear of a bad harvest or a lord's anger. It's an abstract, existential dread. Every traveler is now viewed with suspicion. Are they carrying the sickness? Every stranger is a potential vessel of death. The world outside your small community, once a place of opportunity and trade, is now a source of looming terror. You try to prepare, but how do you prepare for a hurricane when all you have is a cloth tent? You and Elric brew what you can. You create pomanders, oranges studded with cloves, and other aromatic preparations. The theory is that the plague is a miasma, a cloud of poisonous air, and that by surrounding yourself with strong, pleasant smells, you can ward off the corrupted vapor. This quirky tidbit of plague medicine will lead to physicians adopting their famous beaked masks, the beak filled with herbs and flowers to purify the air they breathe. For now, you just encourage people to carry bouquets of herbs and to burn fragrant woods like juniper in their homes. You know it's a flimsy shield, but it's better than nothing. It gives people something to do, a small illusion of control in the face of an uncontrollable force. You also stock up on purgatives and bleeding tools. The prevailing medical theory, when it isn't focused on divine wrath, is that the plague is a poison in the blood. The logical, if terrifying, treatment will be to try and get it out, either by lancing the buboes to release the pus, or by aggressive bloodletting to remove the poisoned humor from the system. You sharpen your lancet, a grim feeling in your gut that you will be using it to fight a war you're destined to lose. Historians still argue about the exact path the Black Death took as it spread across Europe, but its speed and ferocity are undisputed. It moved faster than information, overwhelming communities before they even understood what was happening. Its arrival in a region was often preceded by months of terrifying rumor, a psychological siege before the physical one began. One evening, a man stumbles into the village from a neighboring hamlet, 5 miles down the road. He is wild-eyed with terror. His wife and 2 children are dead. His entire village, he says, is dying. He collapses in the market square, shivering violently, a dark, ugly swelling already visible on his neck. It is here. The abstract fear has just become a concrete, immediate reality. The villagers who had gathered around the man now back away in horror, pulling their children, making the sign of the cross. They look at you and Elric. You are the healers. You are supposed to do something. You stand there, frozen, your bag of useless herbs and tools feeling impossibly light in your hand. Every instinct screams at you to run, to flee, to hide. But you can't. This is your job. This is your curse. You are the one who is supposed to walk toward the sickness when everyone else is running away. Elric looks at you, his face a grim, stony mask. He gives a slight, almost imperceptible nod towards the sick man. It's time to go to work. The arrival of the man from the neighboring hamlet shatters the fragile peace of your village like a stone through a glass window. He dies before the sun sets, his body swiftly turning a mottled, bruised color that gives this new plague its name, the Black Death. His death marks the end of the time of rumor and the beginning of the time of dying. The world you knew, with its predictable rhythms of harvest and hardship, is about to be systematically unmade, and you are going to have a front row seat. Panic, swift and absolute, grips the village. The first reaction is to find someone to blame. The traveler is dead, so the blame turns inward. A woman who was known to have argued with the man is accused of giving him the evil eye. A family on the edge of the village, known for being insular, is whispered to have brought this curse upon everyone. The delicate social fabric, already strained by poverty and suspicion, begins to tear apart. Sir Robert, from the safety of his stone manor, issues an edict. The village is to be quarantined. No one is to enter, and no one is to leave, on pain of death. This concern is not for the villagers, but for himself. He is attempting to build a wall against the miasma, to isolate his household from the sea of sickness. The village becomes a cage, trapping the healthy and the sick together in a terrifying, intimate embrace. Within days, the first native case appears. It is the wife of the blacksmith, a strong, hardy woman. She collapses at her hearth with a sudden, violent fever. By nightfall, a hard, painful bubo has erupted in her armpit. The village holds its breath. You and Elric are summoned. You enter their home, the air already thick with fear. The blacksmith, a man of immense physical strength, is weeping like a child, utterly helpless. You and Elric are wearing cloths soaked in vinegar over your faces, a pathetic attempt to ward off the poisonous air. You know, deep down, it's useless theater, but you must maintain the performance. You examine the woman. She is delirious, her skin burning. The bubo is the size of a goose egg, tense and purplish. According to the medical theories you've read in a hastily acquired pamphlet, the bubo is the seat of the poison. The body is trying to expel the venom to this one spot. Your job is to help it. We have to lance it, Elric says, his voice muffled by his vinegar-soaked rag. This is the mainstream historical medical response to the plague buboes. It was believed that opening them would release the pestilential matter and allow the patient to recover. It was an agonizing, terrifying, and almost universally fatal intervention. You heat the blade of your sharpest knife in the blacksmith's forge until it glows red. You are combining surgery with cautery. The woman is too delirious to restrain. Her husband turns away, unable to watch. You take a deep breath, the acrid smell of hot metal and vinegar filling your nostrils, and you make the cut. A torrent of foul-smelling, blackish, blood-tinged pus erupts from the swelling. The stench is indescribable, a smell of pure corruption that hits you like a physical blow. You recoil, gagging. But you have done the deed. You have opened the gates. The poison, theoretically, is flowing out. She is dead by morning. Her death opens the floodgates. It's as if the plague was waiting for a signal. The next day, 3 more people fall ill. The day after, 10. The neat, orderly village you knew dissolves into a chaotic landscape of death and terror. The sound of the church bell, once a comforting rhythm of daily life, now becomes a constant, tolling dirge, marking the passing of another soul, until there are too many to mark, and the bell falls silent because the bell ringer himself is dead. Your life becomes a living nightmare, a repetitive cycle of useless, horrific work. You and Elric move from house to house, the walking dead tending to the dying. You lance buboes. You bleed patients who are already weak, watching their dark, thick blood flow into your bowl, knowing it will do nothing. You force bitter herbal concoctions down the throats of people who can no longer swallow. You are not healing. You are performing the last rites of your profession, a grim pantomime of a medicine that has been rendered utterly impotent. The quirky, or rather, grotesque tidbit of this time is the sheer variety of useless folk remedies that spring up like weeds in a graveyard. People try everything. They drink potions made of crushed emeralds. They cover their windows with heavy, waxed cloth to keep out the miasma. Some swallow a spoonful of their own urine each morning. Others sit between two large fires, hoping to sweat the plague out. The most desperate try the vicary method, which involves strapping a live, plucked chicken to a bubo, believing the chicken will draw the poison into its own body. You see it all, and you see it all fail. Soon, the social order collapses completely. Families abandon their sick, leaving them to die alone. Parents refuse to see their children. Houses are marked with a crude red cross to warn others away. The priest is one of the first to die, and with him goes the comfort of confession and last rites. People are now dying without hope for their bodies or their souls. You become numb. The fear is still there, a cold, hard knot in your stomach, but it's overlaid with a thick blanket of exhaustion and despair. You no longer see individuals. You see a repeating pattern of symptoms, a conveyor belt of death. Fever, bubo, delirium, death. Fever, bubo, delirium, death. You stop sleeping. Every time you close your eyes, you see the faces of the dead. You have a running joke with yourself, a grim, humorless chuckle that escapes you in the dead of night. You used to worry about your reputation as a healer. Now you'd be happy if anyone was left alive to have an opinion. Historians still argue about the precise mortality rate of the Black Death, but in many places, it was 50% or higher. In your village of 200 souls, you watch as 100 of them are consumed. The fields lie untended. The livestock wander freely. The market square is empty, save for the occasional, haunted-looking survivors scurrying from one house to another. The world is being dressed in black. One day, you arrive at the cottage to find Elric sitting on his stool, staring into space. He is shivering. "My time has come, boy," he says, his voice a hoarse whisper. You refuse to believe it. Not Elric. He is a rock, a permanent feature of your world. But when you help him to his palate, you feel the telltale, stony hardness of a swelling in his groin. He, the master healer, refuses all treatment. "Don't waste the wine," he rasps. "Don't dull your knife on my old hide. It is God's will." He, who has lanced and bled so many, knows the utter futility of it. For 3 days, you sit with him. You give him water. You wipe his brow. You listen to his delirious ramblings, stories of his own apprenticeship, fragments of herbal lore, muttered prayers. You are no longer his apprentice. You are his son, his priest, his only mourner. He dies on the third day. His passing is quiet and uncomplaining as he had lived his life. You are alone. Truly, the death of Elric is a quiet apocalypse. For years, he was the fixed point in your chaotic world, the grumpy, demanding, but ultimately solid foundation upon which your life was built. Now he is gone. You wrap his body in a simple linen sheet. There is no one left to build a coffin, and with the help of the blacksmith, one of the few other able-bodied men still standing, you carry him to the churchyard. You don't dig a proper grave. The ground is too hard, and your energy is too scarce. You place him in the deep, communal plague pit that has been dug behind the church, a pit already holding dozens of your neighbors. You say a few half-remembered words of a prayer and turn away, leaving him among the silent, anonymous company of the dead. You are the master now, the sole inheritor of a cursed profession in a ruined world. The plague, having consumed the weak and the susceptible, begins to burn itself out. The pace of death slows. One day, you wake up and realize the church bell has been silent for a week. Not because the bell ringer is dead, but because no one has died. A strange, hollow silence settles over the village. The survivors, a gaunt and haunted-looking remnant, slowly begin to emerge from their homes, blinking in the sunlight like creatures from a long hibernation. The world they emerge into is a ghost town. Half the cottages are empty, their doors swinging in the wind, their hearts cold. The fields are overgrown with weeds. The social structure is not just broken, it has been annihilated. You are no longer just a healer. You are, by default, one of the village elders, simply by virtue of being alive. You are barely a man grown, but you have the eyes of someone ancient. The immense psychological toll of the plague gives way to the slow, grinding pain of your own body's rebellion. The years of sleeping on straw pallets, of a poor and inconsistent diet, of constant physical labor and stress, have begun to catch up with you. It starts as a dull ache in your lower back, a familiar complaint from the farmers you used to treat. Soon, it becomes a sharp, stabbing pain that makes it difficult to bend over or lift anything heavy. You have, in modern terms, a chronic lower back issue, likely a herniated disc from years of manual labor. In your world, it is a cold room that is settled in your kidneys, a permanent imbalance of the humors. Then your teeth begin to ache. The same dull, throbbing pain you saw on the faces of the men and women who came to your market day stall. You examine your own mouth with a small piece of polished metal. You see the black decay in one of your molars. The tooth worm has taken up residence in your own jaw. The irony is so bitter it almost makes you laugh. You, the tooth puller, are now in need of a tooth puller. And you are the only one left. The thought of trying to perform the procedure on yourself with a pair of pliers is a new circle of hell you hadn't even imagined. But the worst is the joint pain. Your knuckles swell, becoming stiff and painful, especially in the damp cold of the morning. Your knees creak and groan like rusty hinges. It is the onset of arthritis, a common ailment in a world without anti-inflammatory medication. You, the healer, are now plagued by the holy trinity of common medieval ailments: a bad back, a rotten tooth, and aching joints. You try to heal yourself. You are a walking, aching laboratory for your own craft. You chew willow bark for the pain in your joints, one of the few genuinely effective remedies in your arsenal, as it contains salicin, a chemical similar to aspirin. This is a mainstream historical fact. The use of willow for pain and fever is ancient and widespread. You brew warming teas with ginger for the coldness in your back. You rub your aching joints with a salve made of comfrey and lard. You make a poultice of St. John's wort, the devil chaser herb, hoping to drive the pain out. Some of it provides a small, temporary relief. The willow bark dulls the edge of the pain. The warm salves soothe your stiff knuckles. But none of it cures you. You are applying your flimsy patches to your own decaying structure. The quirky tidbit of your current existence is that you have become your own most difficult and frustrating patient. You know all the theories, all the remedies, but you also know their profound limitations. You can't bleed your own back pain away. You can't diagnose your own aching joints with a uroscopy flask and expect a miracle. Your body becomes a constant, miserable reminder of your own professional impotence. How can you confidently offer a cure to others when you cannot even soothe your own suffering? The pain erodes your confidence, grinds down your spirit. You move with the slow, deliberate stiffness of an old man, though you are not yet 30. Your face, reflected in a pail of water, is lined with a map of pain and weariness that rivals Elric's on the day he took you as an apprentice. Historians still argue about the life expectancy of people in the Middle Ages. While the average was low due to incredibly high infant mortality, if a person survived childhood, they had a decent chance of reaching their 50s or 60s. But their quality of life in those later years was often abysmal. Chronic pain from untreated injuries, arthritis, and dental decay was simply a fact of life. You are now living that fact. Your personal suffering gives you a new, unwelcome form of empathy. When a farmer comes to you now, complaining of an ache in his back, you don't just see a humoral imbalance. You feel a shadow of his pain in your own spine. You understand his complaint on a visceral level. This should make you a better healer, more compassionate. But mostly, it just makes you feel more hopeless. You are all just sharing the same small, miserable boat, leaky and taking on water, and you are the one who is supposed to be bailing, but your bucket is full of holes. One evening, as you are trying to find a comfortable position on your straw pallet, a position that doesn't send a jolt of fire up your spine, you think of Elric. You remember his stooped back, his gnarled hands, his slow, pained movements. You used to think it was just the great weight of his knowledge and responsibility that bent him over. Now you realize the truth. He was in pain. Every day. For years. He was another broken body, trying to fix others. His grumpiness, his cynicism, his detachment, perhaps they were not just his personality, but a shield he built against the constant, grinding reality of his own physical decay. You have not only inherited his herbs, his tools, and his cottage. You have inherited his pain. Healer, heal thyself. The old proverb echoes in your mind, but now it sounds like a cruel joke. It is the one command you will never be able to obey. Years pass. The raw, gaping wound of the plague has scarred over, leaving your village and the entire world irrevocably changed. The half-empty cottages have been filled by newcomers, strangers from other ravaged villages seeking land and opportunity. The old, familiar web of kinship and shared history is gone, replaced by a looser, more suspicious society of survivors. The fields are being worked again, but labor is scarce, and for the first time, peasants are demanding and getting higher wages. The rigid social order you grew up in has been cracked, if not shattered. You too have changed. The chronic pains in your body are now a permanent part of your identity. You are the stooped, limping healer, a man who looks 50 but is not yet 40. You have managed. You have survived. You have even, in a modest way, prospered. With so many dead, you are the only person for miles with any medical knowledge. You are no longer paid in chickens and eggs. The new cash-based economy means you can demand coin for your services, and you get it. You have a small chest with a respectable number of silver pennies. You have replaced the leaking thatch on your roof. You have a real mattress, filled with wool instead of straw. You have achieved a level of comfort you never imagined possible. And you are more miserable than ever. The money is a hollow comfort. It cannot soothe the ache in your back or the loneliness in your heart. You are a pillar of the new community, respected and essential. But you are still an outsider. You are the keeper of the village's pain, the man they see only when they are broken or afraid. You are sitting by your fire one evening, sorting dried herbs into clay pots, when you realize a terrifying truth. You are old. You are the Elric of this new generation. And if you were to die tomorrow, all the knowledge in your head, the flawed, contradictory, but hard-won wisdom of a lifetime, would die with you. The line of healers, passed from master to apprentice, would be broken. The thought fills you with a sense of duty that is heavier than any bag of coins. It is time. You need an apprentice. Finding one is not easy. In the world before the plague, being a healer's apprentice was a way out of poverty for a third son. In this new world, with land plentiful and labor valuable, a strong boy can make a good living in the fields. The old desperation is gone. Why would anyone choose a life of filth, fear, and social isolation? Your choice finally falls on a boy named Thomas. He is perhaps 10 years old, a war orphan from a distant town who was taken in by the blacksmith. He is quiet, observant, and has a gentleness that seems out of place in this rough new world. You see him tending to a stray dog with a wounded paw, and you see a flicker of your younger self. You approach the blacksmith and make your offer. You will take the boy, feed him, clothe him, and teach him your craft. The blacksmith, with a house already full of his own children, agrees readily. And so, the circle begins again. Thomas arrives at your cottage, small and silent, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and fear. He looks at the hanging herbs, the strange tools, the bubbling pots, just as you once did. And you, looking at him, are suddenly transformed into Elric. You set him to his first task, grinding comfrey root with the heavy stone mortar and pestle. You watch him struggle, his small arms straining, his face set in a grimace of effort. And you hear Elric's reedy voice coming out of your own mouth. Finer. A poultice is no good if it is coarse. You are a harsh master, just as Elric was. You teach through labor and repetition. You send him to fetch water, to stoke the fire, to clean the pots with their foul-smelling residue. You teach him the physic garden, the names of the herbs, their signatures, and their dangers. You show him the difference between borage for courage and deadly hemlock, your hand closing on his wrist just as Elric's once closed on yours. But something is different. The world you are preparing him for is not the same world Elric prepared you for. The Great Pestilence changed everything. This is the mainstream historical fact that defines your teaching. The Black Death was a major catalyst for medical change. The failure of traditional Galenic and humoral medicine to explain or stop the plague led to a new skepticism, a greater emphasis on direct observation, and public health measures like quarantine. The old certainties were shaken. You find yourself teaching Thomas with a new, bitter layer of cynicism. When you unroll your old humoral chart, you no longer present it as gospel. This, you tell him, is the system the ancient masters believed in. It is a beautiful map, but the plague showed us that there are monsters on the map that the cartographers never dreamed of. You teach him how to let blood, but you add a heavy caveat. This can sometimes cool a fever, you say, but it can also drain a man of his strength when he needs it most. The lancet is a powerful tool, but a foolish one. Use it less than you think you need to. When you teach him uroscopy, you show him the color chart, but then you tell him the story of the woman who ate elderberries. The medulla can tell you things, you explain, but it can also lie. Trust your eyes and your questions more than you trust the flask. This is the quirky, sad tidbit of your apprenticeship model. You are teaching a craft you no longer fully believe in. You are passing down a set of tools while whispering that most of them are broken. You are trying to arm him for a battle you know is unwinnable, but you have no other weapons to give him. Historians still argue about the speed at which medical thought changed after the plague. Was there a sudden revolution, or a slow, generational shift in perspective? For you, it is a personal crisis. You are a bridge between two worlds. You are a man of the old, humoral tradition, but you have seen its utter collapse. You are trying to teach faith and skepticism at the same time, and the contradiction leaves you feeling like a fraud. Thomas is a good student. He is quiet, he learns quickly, and he does not complain. But he is a child of the post-plague world. He is terrified of sickness in a way you never were. When a patient comes in with a simple fever, you see a flicker of raw panic in his eyes. He is always the first to soak a rag in vinegar and cover his face. He washes his hands obsessively. He sees the shadow of the great mortality in every cough and every rash. One day, you are teaching him how to stitch a wound, practicing on a piece of pig skin. His hands are trembling. What if the wound festers? He asks, his voice barely a whisper. Like in the plague? What if it turns black? You look at the boy, and for the first time, you feel a surge of pity that overwhelms your ingrained harshness. You are not just teaching him a set of skills. You are handing him a lifetime of fear. You are bequeathing him your own powerlessness, your own miserable legacy. You place your gnarled, aching hand over his small, trembling one. You do what you can. You say, your voice softer than you intended. You clean the wound. You stitch it closed. You say a prayer. The rest is not in our hands. It is the same lesson Elric taught you after your first failure with Thomas the farmer. But when you say it now, it doesn't sound like a cynical resignation. It sounds like a benediction. The days shorten. The aches in your bones seem to deepen with the coming of winter, a cold that settles not just in the air, but in the very marrow of your being. You move through your life with the slowness of setting honey, each motion calculated to cause the least amount of pain. Your world has shrunk to the size of your cottage and the physic garden out back. Thomas, your apprentice, is a young man now, his hands steady, his knowledge growing. He handles the house calls to the farther corners of the parish, his young legs able to handle the muddy tracks that would now exhaust you. You have become the master in the chair, the final authority who consults on difficult cases, the keeper of the oldest and most bitter herbs. You spend more and more of your time with the books and parchments Elric left you, augmented by a few you have purchased over the years. They are your only constant companions. You read the elegant, confident pronouncements of Galen and Hippocrates, and you see not wisdom, but a beautiful, tragic arrogance. You read the plague tractates, with their desperate remedies of crushed emeralds and unicorn horn, and you see the face of fear itself. Your life has been a long, painful commentary on these texts, a lifetime of scribbling your own failures in their margins. One morning, you wake with a pain in your chest. It is not the familiar ache of your muscles, but a sharp, tight constriction, as if an iron band were being cinched around your ribs. You are short of breath. You know the signs. You have seen them before. The vital spirits are failing. The heart, the seat of life's fire, is struggling to keep its flame alive. You do not call for Thomas, who is out delivering a tonic to a farmer. What would he do? Offer you a strengthening cordial you know is useless? Suggest a bleeding that would only hasten the end? You have taught him too well. He would know, as you know, that this is an internal battle that no external medicine can touch. You manage to pull yourself from your bed and sit in your chair by the cold hearth. You look around the small cottage that has been your entire world. You see the herbs hanging from the rafters, their dusty scents a perfume you have breathed your whole life. You see the mortar and pestle, its stone surface worn smooth by your hands and by Elric's before you. You see the uroscopy flasks, gleaming faintly in the gray morning light. They are the artifacts of your life, the holy relics of your failed religion. You think back on your long, miserable journey. You remember the shivering boy, traded for a side of bacon. You remember the pride of your first successful poultice and the crushing shame of your first fatality. You remember the terror of bleeding a lord, the grotesque theater of pulling teeth in the market square, the profound humility of witnessing a birth. You remember the faces of the plague victims, a gallery of ghosts that will follow you into the dark. Was it all for nothing? This is the question that settles in your chest, heavier than the physical pain. You devoted your life to a system of medicine that was fundamentally wrong. You dispensed remedies that were often ineffective and sometimes harmful. You stood against the great ocean of human suffering with a shield made of twigs and good intentions. By any rational measure, your life has been a failure. But then, other memories surface. You remember the grateful smile of a mother whose baby's colic you soothed with dill water. You remember the rough handshake of the shepherd whose arm you saved from a festering arrow wound. You remember the look of relief on 100 faces when you gave their pain a name, even if that name was just a fiction of the humors. You gave them a story for their suffering, a ritual to perform, a person to turn to. You were a focal point for their hope and their fear. You were the one who did not turn away. The mainstream historical fact is that the medicine of your time was deeply flawed. But the human need for a healer, for a compassionate witness to one's pain, is eternal. You were that witness. The quirky, final tidbit of your life is the realization that your greatest tool was never the herb or the lancet. It was your presence. You showed up. You sat with the dying. You held the hands of the grieving. You shared in the terror and the hope. You were a professional hope-monger in a world that offered very little of it. Historians will forever argue about the legacy of your era's medicine. Was it a dark age of superstition or a necessary, fumbling step on the long road to scientific understanding? As you sit in your chair, the world fading at the edges, you realize the answer doesn't matter. It was simply your life. You hear the cottage door open. It is Thomas. He stops short when he sees you, his face falling as he takes in your pale skin and labored breathing. He rushes to your side, his eyes filled with a young man's fear of loss. "Master," he says, his voice trembling. "What should I do?" You look at him. This boy you have shaped, this vessel into which you have poured all your bitter knowledge. And in his face, you see your only true legacy. You have passed the torch. You will carry on the work. He will be a little less certain, a little more skeptical, a little more compassionate because of you. He is the next link in the long, unbroken chain of those who try. You manage a faint, weak smile. "You know what to do, son," you whisper, your voice a dry rustle of leaves. You do what you can. Your eyes drift closed. The pain in your chest is fading now, replaced by a spreading, gentle cold. The dusty scent of yarrow and chamomile fills your senses one last time. Your long, arduous life is drawing to a close, a fading light in the smoky darkness of your small cottage. You leave behind a legacy not of cures, but of care. A legacy of good intentions, inevitable failure, and the profound, simple courage of showing up. The world you are leaving behind is a quiet one, the sharp edges of its memories softened by the haze of a life's final, gentle exhalation. The scent of drying herbs, once so pungent and specific, now blends into a single, earthy aroma of peaceful repose, a scent of the good soil to which all things must return. The chair you rest in is no longer a simple wooden object, but a vessel that has held the weight of your worries and your weariness for so long that it seems to have absorbed them, leaving you feeling lighter now, unburdened. The low, gray light filtering through the small window is not bleak, but soft, a gentle blanket laid over a world that has finally ceased its clamor. Your apprentice, a good and steady hand, will continue the work, his own journey just beginning as yours finds its serene and overdue conclusion. He will take the lessons of your life, the hard-won scraps of wisdom gleaned from 1,000 moments of failure and a handful of small, quiet victories, and he will carry them forward. The endless cycle of pain and healing, of fear and comfort, will continue without you, as it always has, and there is a strange and profound peace in that knowledge. The burden is finally lifted. The tools can be laid to rest. There is no more need to strive, no more need to fear the coming night, for the night is now a friend, a soft and quiet harbor at the end of a long and storm-tossed voyage. Rest now.